Good morning. I'd like to call the Metro Council Business Meeting of September 26, 2024 to order. Georgia, will you please call the roll and welcome everybody?
Yes, Councillor Wong,
Present.
Councillor Rosenthal,
Present.
Councillor Nolan,
Present. Good morning.
Councillor Gonzalez,
Present. Good morning.
Councillor Lewis is joining now. Hi, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Simpson,
Present. Good morning.
good morning. Councillor Lewis
Present.
and Council President Peterson.
Here. Thank you. All right. Before we begin our agenda items, can we please play the safety video for our in-person attendees?
I'm Laura Lepley, a Metro Park Ranger. Here at Oxbow Park, safety is our #1 priority, not only for our guests, but for our staff members. I'm at the Welcome Center and you're at the Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairway to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk, and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the reception desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at Oxbow Park.
Great. We will now open public communication on non-agenda items. As a reminder, we will have a public hearing on the 2024 Urban Growth Management Chief Operating Officer recommendations later on our agenda. Georgia, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public communication portion of the meeting on non-agenda items?
If anyone wishes to testify on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. I will manage a timer to go off at the 3-minute mark. If you have not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you are joining us on Zoom, you can sign up to testify by raising your hand on Zoom. Depending on your version of Zoom, the raise hand function has its own tab or is located within the reactions tab. Those calling in can raise their hands by dialing *9. If you are joining us in person, you can sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. For those joining us on Zoom, I will promote you to a full panelist when it is your turn to testify. I will call on your name or number and when it is your turn to testify, and a window will appear asking you to accept being promoted to a panelist. Once you click to accept, your Zoom window will close for just a brief moment before you rejoin as a panelist, where you will be able to turn on your camera if you like. As a reminder, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please introduce yourself before the record. Thank you. And I do not see anyone in the audience that is signed up to testify on non-agenda items, and there is no one raising their hand in Zoom.
All right. Giving a couple seconds just in case. All right. We will close the public communication on non-agenda items and move on to our first presentation of the day. Counselors, we will begin today's meeting with a presentation from Indigenous Employee Affinity Group and Tribal Affairs Program in recognition of the National Day of Remembrance for Indian Boarding Schools, which is honored on September 30th. Today we have Tribal Affairs Manager Katie McDonald, who will help us kick off our presentation. Thank you, Katie.
Okay. Thank you, Council President Peterson and councilors. It's great to be with you this morning. Fesquex, Kevimali, Luisquex, Genesis Kayakin, Utilispe, Utunafa, Skilhu, Tomasu Tlaitri, Swam McDonald, Louis, Pichbot, Kosep, Sufsep McDonald, Sherry McDonald, Marjorie Wall, Richard Wall, Wesley Jones, Louis Airway. So good morning. Just want to introduce myself to you all, share my name, my tribal background. My family is Bitterroot, Salish, Pondering, Kootenai from the Fish Trap Band. And I don't usually introduce some of my other tribal identities, but I feel like it's important this morning because I descend from all of those people who survived the unfortunate circumstances of the institutions that we're here to talk to you about today. And so some of those other identities include being Shoshone, Bannock, Nimi, Poop, Tlingit, and also Anishinaabe from the Millneck removal folks who were sent to the White Earth Indian Nation.
Can we just do a mic check on Katie's mic? Mine's pretty hot too. Just to make it easier to understand.
Is that better?
That's better.
Okay, sorry. So as President Peterson said, I am the Tribal Liaison in Metro's Tribal Affairs Program. Before we get into the presentation this morning, I just want to offer a content warning to everybody who's here with us that the presentation includes a discussion of the harsh treatment experienced by Indigenous children in boarding schools, and folks who are listening in today, either in person or virtually, might find that content upsetting. So we ask you all to please take necessary precautions for yourself and others who might be listening with you. We also have some new guests here, I think, for the council meeting and other business later this morning. And if possible, I'd like to just take a quick moment to ask folks in the audience today not to take any photos or recordings of the presentation that we're providing out of respect for our presenters. We prefer that the primary record of this presentation is through the council meeting recording. So, we're here as a part of the Metro Tribal Affairs Program and our Indigenous Staff Affinity Group. Today we're bringing awareness to the National Day of Remembrance for Indian boarding schools in the United States and Canada. The National Day of Remembrance is a time to honor the children and families who survived as well as fell victim to the residential boarding school, mission school, and day school systems in Canada and the United States. It's a day to acknowledge the historical and ongoing impacts of the U.S. and its federal Indian boarding school policies to tribes and their communities. And as President Peterson mentioned, the Day of Remembrance is observed on September 30th annually. Last year, we were here to share with you hard facts and the irrefutable evidence of what boarding schools did to the children who were stolen to those institutions and the hardships that they endured. We shared data and statistics from the first Department of Interior report investigating the troubled legacy and impacts of these schools. We also shared some hard personal and family recollections of these institutions and stories that were told in some of our communities. And we began talking to you about how the historical and contemporary and lingering effects of these institutions connect to the work that we do today as a regional government in what is now known as the Greater Portland area. Today we're here with similar themes to talk about how this has affected our families and our communities, to share updates with you on the second investigative report from the Department of Interior that was released earlier this summer, and to share updates on proposed federal legislation that you have supported over recent years in our federal affairs agenda, which we're very appreciative of. I'd like to briefly introduce my colleagues Felicia Tiba from Metro Parks and Nature, Carissa Lowe, also from Metro Parks and Nature, and Michael Lee from the Waste Prevention and Environmental Services team, who are all here to speak with you. I'm very grateful to work with each of these folks and to also call them my friends. And before we get into their presentations, I just wanted to share something with them. So just a short blessing, if that's okay. Amodkan, Ketas Lemti Huisnes Wasket. Lemlam Shuis Kirhuish Ke and Huishwiten. Utluke Uchtawehu Ke es Sultumshi, Kirhuicht Ke Nyopiautin. Utlu Kesats, Amodkan, Ketas Lemti Huisnes Wasket. I'm not the best at speaking my Salish and Salichian, the Salish language, because that's something that's been taken away from my family as a part of the legacy of these institutions. But Ahalasket Uchnes Kwakutsuti Iksunum Salish and Welton. Every day I tell myself I'm going to practice and I'm going to learn it. So, just a few last housekeeping items. We appreciate everybody's grace this morning and good intentions as we talk about this topic, because it's hard. You guys can all tell. I'm having a hard time already. And we also want to acknowledge that the boarding schools that we're going to be discussing in the U.S. aren't the only supposed education institutions that affected Indigenous communities, peoples, and nations in what we now know as the United States, Canada, Mexico, Central and South America, and Pacific Island nations. And we hold each of those communities in our hearts today because of the harmful experiences that we share. and also to uplift our collective resilience in the face of attempted genocides and colonization. So, for anybody else who's in here today or who's listening, who's a part of one of those communities, we're with you and hope that you feel seen and heard in the presentation. So, with that, I'll hand things over to Felicia.
Good morning, Guatsiopa, Sankitamu. My name is Felicia Tiba. I'm born for the Badger clan and born to the Bear clan. And I'm an enrolled member of the Pueblo of Acoma, and I grew up at Santa Clara Pueblo in New Mexico. Like Katie said, today we are here to talk to you about the National Day of Remembrance for Indian Boarding School Survivors. And I will be speaking to my family's story as boarding school survivors. For my family, the boarding school experience is one that I know of because that era of time impacted 2 generations of my family. And while there were negative experiences, there were moments that made the experience bearable for my family. Like if it were not for the boarding school system, my parents would have never met. I would never have seen such embarrassing yearbook photos of them as teenagers. And yet, the stories that have left the biggest impact were the stories that showcase the negative impacts of boarding schools. I want you to imagine the kind of person you were at 12 years old. Imagine how you may have relied on your parents, your siblings, or your friends. Now imagine being taken from all of that. That is what happened to my great aunt, my maternal grandmother's older sister. Her name was Mary. She was taken away to boarding school at the age of 12. And in some ways, she was lucky because she was only sent 100 miles away to Santa Fe. Her experience there changed her family's life because she never came home. Let me repeat this. She was 12 years old and never came home. I was told that my great-grandparents were never given a clear answer as to what happened to Mary. Just that she supposedly got sick and passed away. To this day, we don't know where she's buried. Not being able to bring her home hurt our family so much. This hurt so much for them because they didn't get to send her off in the way that we do. They didn't get to take care of their grief in the way that most Pueblo people do, which I can imagine they carried with them for who knows how long. And the loss of Mary changed life for my grandma, because Mary was the oldest sister, and when she passed away, my grandmother became the eldest daughter. And after that loss, my great-grandparents refused to let my grandma leave. She was forced to drop out of school in the 8th grade. And my great-aunt wasn't the only person in my family sent away to boarding school. My parents and both of my grandfathers were sent away. I've heard many different stories, and I've heard stories about my maternal grandfather, who ran away from 3 different boarding schools. The last time he ran away, my great-grandfather never let him be sent away again. Like I said, even my parents were sent away to boarding school. Both of my parents graduated from the same school in 1969. For me and my family, this experience has adversely affected us, especially the way that we were raised by my parents. It changed what they had always been told was important about our Pueblo culture, because they were taught that they needed to assimilate and that the only way to be successful in this world was to be part of mainstream American culture, to put aside what they were taught so that they could succeed. Because of this, there's a lot I don't know about my culture, and even now as an adult, I struggle to learn how to speak our traditional languages. For me, it meant that I spent a lot of my youth feeling guilty, that my parents never taught me the other things that other people know. And it's now as an adult that I'm starting to feel pride to be an Indigenous person, to be a Pueblo person, and that I want to know more about our culture. All of this is to say
there's importance to recognizing boarding school survivors. They went through some of the most difficult experiences a person can go through, and as children at that. And it is now that our people, the elders and the youth, have to recognize the great amount of healing that is needed to overcome the impacts that have been felt. And it is my hope and my prayer that the people are able to reach the healing that they need. Thank you.
All right, Klahalia, Nakhalas, and Sites and Squatch, Carissa Lowe. Hello, everyone. My name is Carissa Lowe. I'm a member of the Cowlitz Indian tribe, one of our local tribes. This is part of our historic homeland. I'm also the Nature and Neighborhoods Community Grants Program Manager. And today I'm going to share information with you about the second report that has recently come out. And I've got a lot of talking points, so I might talk a little fast, but it's good stuff. In June 2021, Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland launched the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, which is the federal government's first ever comprehensive effort to recognize the troubled legacy of its federal Indian boarding school policies. In May 2022, the department released the first volume of its investigative report on federal Indian boarding schools. We shared information on this first report with you last year for our presentation for the National Day of Remembrance. In July, the Department of the Interior released the second and final volume of the investigative report, which builds upon the first report and expands on the number and details of institutions to include deaths of children who attended these institutions, the number of burial sites, participation of religious institutions and organizations, and federal dollars spent to operate these locations. Some new information which we'd especially like to highlight for the Council from the second report includes the identification of an additional 1,025 institutions which did not satisfy the four criteria initially used for this investigation, but which nevertheless advanced similar assimilation and education policy goals against tribes and Native children. Estimates that between 1871 and 1969, the U.S. government made appropriations available of more than $23.3 billion in FY23 inflation-adjusted dollars for the federal Indian boarding school system and other similar institutions and associated assimilation policies. Just think what those dollars could have done if they had been put to better use. The U.S. established and supported the precedent for Indigenous child theft as a part of formal relations with Indigenous people, which Canada, Australia, and New Zealand replicated in their formal relations with Indigenous peoples. The second report includes policy recommendations for consideration by Congress and the executive branch to continue to chart a path to healing and redress for tribes and other Indigenous communities. Assistant Secretary Brian Newland of the Department of the Interior shared 8 recommendations for the federal government which aim to support a path toward healing the nation. We encourage you to read the report so that you can learn about them. Before sharing feedback on this report, we want to acknowledge the challenging position that we're put in as Indigenous people regarding this report and the effort. We want to celebrate the work and the progress that does happen while simultaneously not losing sight of the tremendous need for more work because what's been done to date is nowhere near comprehensive enough. Our critiques regarding the scope of the report. The second report omits several institutions in Oregon which we have learned about over the past several years from tribes and Native and Alaska Native community partners. The second report does not adequately cover the full list of institutions which have been historical and contemporary child removal systems, including boarding schools, mission schools, Indian schools, day schools, military schools, fort schools, labor schools and camps, sanatoriums, mental health or other healthcare institutions, orphanages, detention or reform schools, adoption and foster placements. Criteria used to identify institutions severely narrowed the number and full list of institutions which should have been brought forward as part of this trans-institutional colonialist project. Criteria such as needing to have been involved in the education of Indian people. We know there were non-educational based institutions that contributed to the theft, removal, and loss of Native children from their families, communities, and nations, such as sanitariums, asylums, and orphanages. So while this is progress and some additional institutions in Oregon were added, it's still an undercount and an incomplete picture for us locally and also likely nationally. Regarding the methodology, one of the primary sources of information for this report include U.S. government records at a limited number of federal repositories, 9 repositories across the U.S. We anticipate and assume that these federal records are incomplete because of historical poor and racist record-keeping practices, and because it's hard to believe that 9 repositories could comprehensively cover and address 574 distinct federally recognized and other state and unrecognized tribes across the U.S. who experience 417 boarding schools at 451 unique sites across the country. Also, listening sessions with survivors occurred at 12 locations across the U.S., and that informed the development of this second report. Again, while important, we anticipate and assume that these 12 locations also cannot comprehensively cover and address impacts to all tribes and indigenous communities across the United States. While it is imperfect, there are some positives we want to celebrate in this report. It provides more data and information which will appeal to the structural, scientific, and quantitative approach of dominant culture and white government, which have a key responsibility and role to supporting healing and transformation. Without hard numbers, even preliminary ones like the ones in these reports, many more decades could go by without meaningful action. Also, listening sessions provide survivors and others impacted with the opportunity to be heard by some of the highest levels of government and to inform and shape recommendations for what to do next. This is a form of sharing power and shifting the power differential in the right direction for Native peoples. Every name added to this report helps create the information that someday will help that child's family, tribe, or community to pursue efforts to bring them home. Researching, documenting, and naming it before it's all gone brings visibility to the invisible whose stories have been excluded and hidden. What to do next? And because there is more work to do, our teammate Michael is here to share more with you about the legislative advocacy of the Native American Boarding School and Healing Coalition and why the bills they're advocating for need to be supported. Thank you. I almost made it.
Hello, my name is Michael Lee. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a mix of Native American and settler descent. So NABS, the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition, was formed in 2012, in part in advocate for the establishment of the Federal Commission on the U.S. Indian Boarding Schools, similar to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission on Canada's residential schools. For years, NABS has been a part of a grassroots movement of Native academics, researchers, tribal leaders, and boarding school survivors and descendants who are seeking truth, justice, and healing. The work to introduce a federal commission has been underway for almost a decade. As for the legislation, the proposed Truth and Healing Commission on Indian Boarding Schools Policy Act of 2024 would establish a federal commission to investigate, document, and report on the histories, practices, and policies of Indian boarding schools and their long-term impacts on Native communities. The Commission would also recommend actions for the federal government can take to adequately hold itself accountable for the trauma inflicted by these facilities and policies. Recommendations could include protections for unmarked graves, supporting repatriation, and ending modern-day Indian child removal policies. As for the legislation, there are House H.R. 7227 and Senate S. 1723 versions of this bill, making their way through the legislative process. In June 2023, the Senate version of the bill was unanimously referred to the Senate floor after review by the Committee on Indian Affairs. The House version is awaiting committee action before it can move to the floor for the vote. There are many steps until the bill gets signed into law, but this is the most monumentum the legislation has ever had. Where does Oregon delegation stand on this topic? Oregon Senators Wyden and Markley and Representative Chavez DeRamira have co-sponsored and support the legislation. Representative Maden Mitchie also signed on after outreach and a request by our federal affairs lobbyist Betsy Emery on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Day. Betsy is in the audience today, I believe, in case the council has any questions on the legislation after the presentation. How is Metro involved? So, as a reminder, multiple institutions existed in the state of Oregon and existed specifically within the greater Portland area. There are 10 documented institutions across the state of Oregon, including Forest Grove Indian Trading School that was located and operated in our region and service area in Forest Grove, about 30 minutes away from where I grew up. The work Metro does that addresses social determinants of health, wellness, and safety is important, like the access to affordable housing and wraparound services. These are important for Indigenous communities healing from the continued impacts of intergenerational trauma. The work we do in Parks and Nature Department to partner with tribes and urban Indigenous community members to reconnect with the land and traditional lifeways and honoring this importance for Indigenous communities. It's about where we fund our projects and how we take care of the cultural resources or ancestors that may be there. And it's our role as a historical cemetery steward and respectfully caring for our loved ones and ancestors, some who may include Indigenous people. There are many ways that we can and should connect with and encourage fostering more support and ownership for supporting healing and transformation for impacted families, communities, and tribal nations from the historical and contemporary impacts of boarding schools. What we're already doing to acknowledge this day is this council presentation by the Indigenous Affinity Group and Tribal Affairs. We also have educational materials and resources displayed in the MRC Metro Regional Center lobby for the week for staff, leadership, and counselors to engage with. We've reached out to racial equity leaders at the venues so that these resources can be shared with our staff assigned at sites. On Monday, September 30th, orange lighting will be at the Oregon Convention Center, the Morrison Bridge, which is paid by Metro, and the Blazers are joining us with orange lighting at the Moda Center this year. The Expo Center is a possibility still at this point. I've also created a one-page document for social media or physical postings to inform people why they are seeing orange lighting. Our Metro Tribal Affairs program is also supporting the NAYA Awareness event on Sunday, September 29th. It is an event led by Native community for Native community, including survivors and descendants to gather, heal, and have community together. And this isn't the last time you will see us. We encourage everyone to do more research on their own. We will continue to request and encourage Council to keep NAB's legislation as a priority in our federal affairs agenda. We encourage you to continue reaching out to delegation and utilizing your voice and the spaces you are in. Share information about this day with others. Continue to support Metro Tribal Affairs. I want to thank you for your time and your continued support in recognizing this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, thank you for sharing. Carissa, thank you so much, and summarizing and acknowledging from the federal level and bringing that information here. And Michael, thank you. It's obvious you're doing a lot of organizing, all of you together, and I appreciate that. So just thank you also, Katie, for organizing and helping put this together. The entire affinity group as well, because I'm sure that there are a lot more folks. We've got folks here supporting, but that need to be thanked for thinking about what content every year to bring forward, and who is feeling like they want to come forward and storytell. And I really appreciate that. There's a clear opportunity for our staff and leadership at Metro and the guests that are with us today in learning more about this. And I just want to thank you for bringing that forward. Tribes and their communities of these institutions and defined actions we can professionally and personally take to help support healing and transformation for all. With that, I feel like a moment of silence, and then we'll take a recess. Thank you. And we'll take a 5-minute recess and come back and have a hearing on the consent agenda, a resolution, and the UGB. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please take their seats and please take your seats. Thank you very much. We are getting back to the agenda, so please sit down.
Is the recording on, Georgia? Okay. Okay, I'd like to bring us back into session, and we will have the consent agenda. The consent agenda has one item, resolution number 24-5427, for the purpose of confirming the reappointment of Chris Oxley. It's not the reappointment, it's the appointment of Chris Oxley to the Metropolitan Exposition Recreation Commission. Do I have a motion?
Councilor Gonzalez move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Gonzalez and seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes. All right. Move on to our resolution. We have resolution number 24-5431 for the purpose of accepting the Oregon Zoo 2024 campus plan. Thanks to the support of voters in our region, the Oregon Zoo's 2024 campus plan is before us today. The plan supports exciting investments that further the zoo's mission to protect animal health and welfare, provide conservation, education, increase sustainability, and improve accessibility at Oregon's top paid cultural attraction. With over 1 million visitors every year, the Oregon Zoo holds a special place in the hearts of our residents and of this council. We've had the opportunity to enjoy the incredible impact of the 2008 bond from Elephant's Land to Primate Forest to Polar Passage. And here with us today to go over the campus plan is both Heidi Runn and Posse, Director and Deputy Director. You have a name but no title. Sorry. Heidi Runn, our Oregon Zoo Director, and Posse, our Deputy Director, to share details of the plan and what we can expect to see from the 2024 bond investments. Heidi.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Council President Peterson, fellow Metro Councilors. I'm Heidi Ron, the Director of the Oregon Zoo, and with me is Paul Posse, the Deputy Director of Operations. We are excited to be here with you today as we prepare to launch into a new phase of capital improvements at the Oregon Zoo. Next slide. Here I am. Okay. Okay. We are losing nature at an alarming rate. Zoos and aquariums provide that connection for our community, inspire them to act. More than 700 million people visit zoos and aquariums annually across the globe, and that gives us a huge opportunity to educate and connect. Creating that magical connection to animals is what we're all about. Our main purpose is to inspire our community to support wildlife. Our zoo has been making that connection happen for our community for 137 years. Next slide. I want to take a moment to celebrate that this month, the Oregon Zoo has reached a significant milestone. 50 years ago, we were one of the first zoos to be accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And for 50 years, we have maintained that accreditation, achieving the highest standards in animal care and welfare, veterinary care, conservation, education, staffing, facilities, safety, guest services, finances, and much, much more. The investment from our community has helped to make that happen, and ongoing investments will continue to ensure we are advancing modern zoological practices. We know we need to update several outdated sections of our zoo in order to meet the gold standard in facilities and care. The campus plan outlines how we will invest in our future and ensures we are advancing as we learn more about the animals in our care. Next slide. The Oregon Zoo is a treasure in our community. We welcome a diverse audience of more than 1.3 million visitors annually, making us the top paid cultural attraction in the state. Nearly 38,000 households are proud members of our zoo. We've developed new partnerships with a few local high schools to integrate wildlife conservation into their curriculum, and we host more than 50,000 school kids each year during fall and spring school group season. Nearly 250,000 guests come to enjoy events hosted by us, like this weekend's Zootoberfest and our annual Zoo Lights festivities, which is a family tradition for many. We are committed to ensuring our community can access the zoo. The Oregon Zoo has been a leader in developing and executing an access strategy specifically geared toward low-income and communities of color, providing $1.6 million worth of discounted tickets annually.
We are also celebrating 25 years of a successful zoo apprenticeship program that offers paid job training to underrepresented youth in our community. And finally, our community showed up strong for us when they approved a ballot measure in May to continue the public investment on our zoo campus and our mission. Next slide. The Oregon Zoo is a source of pride for the greater Portland region, advancing conservation education and species recovery locally as well as around the globe. The zoo is well known for its work in the Pacific Northwest, restoring California condors, butterflies, and other native wildlife. Through long-standing conservation partners, some longer than 20 years old, the zoo is also helping some of the most celebrated and endangered species around the world. We expect our role in endangered species recovery to continue to grow due to the threats to wildlife. We need to ensure we have the infrastructure in place to respond to the needs of species on the brink of extinction, and we've heard from you that this needs to be an ongoing priority in our campus planning. I'm going to turn it over to Posse to share the highlights of how our campus plan is a physical manifestation of our mission.
Thank you, Heidi. Good morning, Council President Peterson and fellow Metro Councilors. The 2024 Oregon Zoo Campus Plan follows on the successes of the 2008 bond to begin a new phase of capital improvements at the zoo. This phase would implement a substantial portion of the campus plan, advancing the Metro Council's goals for animal health, climate, conservation, education, and economic vitality in one of the region's most beloved community institutions. The new plan focused on areas of the campus that were not targeted for substantial investments from the 2008 bond. These include the zoo's oldest exhibits and buildings, as well as outdated educational exhibits and not fully accessible pathways and facilities. On this map, the dark green represents the 40% of the zoo campus that was updated with the 2008 zoo bond measure. On light green areas shown here are what we have plans in the future. Next slide, please. Bringing together key stakeholders, we looked at where we have been and where we want to go as an enduring pillar of the metro region. Our community engagement for this plan involved diverse groups of internal and external zoo allies who shared their experiences, opinions, and suggestions to help shape the exciting future for their zoo. It involved more than 2,000 contacts, multiple partner organizations, and in-person engagement sessions with historically marginalized communities. Zoo staff heard broad community support for the goals of the draft plan, particularly goals to improve accessibility, wayfinding, guest amenities, and of course to update or replace outdated animal habitats. Zoo staff were also supportive of proposed improvements to behind-the-scenes care staff facilities, storage areas, and servicing access. Next slide, please. These are the core elements we heard from council and community as focus areas that were included in the development of the new campus plan. Next slide, please. The new campus plan is a significant opportunity to advance Metro Council's goals for equity, accessibility, and economic vitality in one of the Metro's most beloved and visible public serving properties. It aligns the zoo's long-range vision with policies adopted by the Metro Council, including construction and career pathways, equity in contracting, the clean air construction program, and sustainable sites. Next slide, please. Adoption of the 2024 campus plan provides us with a roadmap for the future as we launch into the implementation using the zoo bond. Work to prepare for the implementation of the campus plan and ballot measure commitments will continue following Council's adoption of the resolution. A team will be developed to implement the campus plan. Project budgets will be approved via the campus improvement plan process. Metro Council will appoint a zoo bond citizens oversight committee, and Metro Council policies will be advanced. I would like to now pass it back to Heidi. Next slide, please.
Thank you for guiding us during the development of the plan, for approving the draft plan earlier this year, and most importantly, successfully seeking community financial support to make it all happen. We have a plan, we have the land use permit, and we have the funding. I believe the Oregon Zoo is set up to continue advancing the important work we all do together for wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselors, are there any questions for staff on the actual campus plan? This is the second time or third time you've been before us. So, yes, Counselor Wong.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Heidi and team, for presenting the plan. Very exciting stuff. One of our priorities, I think, as a council was also improving the safety and work experience for folks that work at the zoo, and I didn't see that listed as one of the council priorities. And I was wondering if you could speak a little more about the improvements plan that will make it a more pleasant place to work.
Yeah, that's a great question. Absolutely. So each one of the projects identified in the plan also includes updates to the workspaces for our staff, and that will be integrated to make sure that they are comfortable, they have what they need. But even outside of what's in this plan, we're making those improvements already. We are upgrading existing facilities at the zoo currently to help create better workspaces for our team. But I can assure you that will be integrated into the design of each one of these projects.
Awesome. Any other questions?
No. Thank you.
Online? Counselor Lewis, Counselor Simpson, just checking in. All right. Do I have a motion for resolution number 24-5431 for the purpose of accepting the Oregon Zoo 2024 campus plan?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, I was going to move it on behalf of my constituents, but that's okay.
Well, on behalf of the entire region, it's the Oregon Zoo.
I think it was moved on the part of kids.
Yeah. I believe it was moved by Counselor Lewis and seconded by Counselor Simpson. Thank you. And I will turn it over to Counselor Nolan for further discussion about the importance of the zoo in your district.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'll just thank the voters again, as you have pointed out, Heidi, throughout the region, and my colleagues here for supporting this. The collaborative and animal-centered, safety-centered way you've approached this should be a model for the country and the global zoo world. I salute you.
Thank you.
Every award is well deserved. And there have been many blessed. So thank you. Anything else? All right. With that, Georgia, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Enthusiastic aye.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
And Council President Peterson.
Aye. The motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to all the shovel diggings. What do you call that? The kickoff. Thank you.
Groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking.
See you there.
Sounds like.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. We are moving on to our public hearing for the 2024 Urban Growth Management Chief Operating Officer recommendation. We're continuing our conversation today. Our council has reviewed regional demographic and economic forecasts and a capacity analysis related to the urban growth boundary. And we are considering a proposal from the city of Sherwood to expand the urban growth boundary. At our last council meeting on this topic on September 12th, we discussed the COO recommendation. Today's meeting is an opportunity to hear Metro's engagement committees and from the public their response to that recommendation. We will begin the discussion today with a brief overview from our staff, followed by invited testimony from Metro engagement committees, then a public hearing. To start us off, we have Erin Key, our Urban Policy and Development Manager, along with Ted Reed, our Principal Regional Planner. If you can come forward. Or Catherine Charlo, our Planning Director. Thank you.
Council President Peterson, members of the council, thank you so much for having us here. I am not, in fact, Ted Reed. I am Catherine Charlo, Planning Director here at Metro, Director of Planning, Development, and Research, and really appreciate your taking the time to hear from our advisory committees and the public on this issue. As Council President Peterson noted, we've been bringing a lot of information to you over the past year and really looking forward to sort of moving forward and hearing your thoughts. I'm going to turn it over to Erin to talk about the actual recommendation, the COO staff recommendation. She's going to describe that. She's going to summarize briefly a little bit of the engagement we've done and talk to you about potential areas for conditions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'll be very brief, but I wanted to go over just a little bit of background. If we can go to the next slide, please. First of all, those lovely people in this picture are members of the Urban Growth Management youth cohort. I want to touch a bit on the different kinds of engagement that we did during this process, really over 20 months of time. We engaged with Metro's committees, including MTAC, MPAC, and CORE. You'll hear from some of them today. We held a first time ever Urban Growth Report Roundtable where we really attempted to open up all of the data and analysis and help all kinds of groups from around the region understand that analysis, ask questions, dig into it, and really understand the basis of where a decision about the urban growth boundary comes from. That's also what we did with the youth cohort. These youth dedicated their time and met with us over the course of a year to learn about planning and about the urban growth boundary. And you can see they're holding in their hands their visions and thoughts about important considerations for that decision. We provided presentations to a variety of interest groups. We counted over 100 over the past year. And so we've really been trying to get a lot of people involved in this process, and I'm looking forward to hearing from many of them today. Next slide. I want to point out, too, some of the new analysis that occurred in the 2024 Urban Growth Report that we haven't had in years past. Looking at the population forecast using race, ethnicity, and disability status. Additionally, this year we added to our housing needs analysis specific analysis of affordability, of looking at the needs of housing for those in our population who are houseless, and also addressing the historic underproduction of housing and adding that to our needs in addition to future growth. We looked at equity outcomes in past expansion areas. We also brought in professionals to help build an expansive model to understand the financial implications and feasibility of redevelopment and infill inside the urban growth boundary to understand how much growth could be accommodated there. We looked at gentrification and displacement trends inside the region as well. Next slide, I'll just briefly touch on the main points from the COO staff recommendation. The COO and staff recommendation suggested that council expand the urban growth boundary to include the Sherwood West Urban Reserve based on a regional need for land for housing and industrial development. That recommendation was based on extensive data analysis conducted over the last 20 months and documented in the draft urban growth report. Last week, councilors had a work session and talked about this COO report. Next slide. The Metro Council can put conditions on a UGB expansion to ensure that future planning and eventually development occurs in an expansion area as it is expected to today. These are the topics and the types of conditions that the COO and staff recommended for council consideration. Last slide, please. Just to go over where we are in the process, today is our public hearing. In September, you're going to be hearing from many of the advisory committees who report to Metro today. The next time this issue will be before council is scheduled on October 8th at a work session where staff is hoping for direction from council to begin the public process, the public notification, not the public process. Obviously, we've been doing that for some time, but the public notification process. Leading into a first reading of an ordinance to finalize this decision later in November, followed by a final decision early in December. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Councilors, any questions for staff at this point? Councilor Wong.
Thank you, Madam President. When you were looking at the gentrification and displacement trends, can you speak a little bit more about what that entailed and what findings were? Was it that folks in higher expense areas were being pushed out to further out to the UGB, or just general kind of findings around that?
Yeah, it's difficult to summarize on my feet. I'd really love to have that data and dig into it with you. But it was an attempt to really understand more dynamics inside the growth boundary. And as we're, of course, considering how we will redevelop, keeping those trends in mind and understanding where those dynamics are most likely to occur. So that's the best summary I can provide you without the rest of the report, but happy to talk about it more.
I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Rosenthal, Nolan.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work that you've done. I'm sure it's been an exhaustive and exhausting process for you. A lot of connections. My question is this. Metro has a number of goals. One of the ones is to deal with our land use planning needs and the requirements of state law. And the other one is to, as we have goals, to create viable communities. And as you know, each community in our 24 in our region has different characteristics, different history, different background, different composition, different economics, and so forth. So we have two goals. One is to have a regional perspective, and the other one is to create communities that have been and continue to be viable. And how does that plug into the process? In other words, how do we incorporate the individual needs of an individual community in this process?
Counselor, thank you for the question. I'm going to take the first stab at it and then see if Aaron would like to add more. I think you have just summarized the critical task in front of you all, right? The regional vision really tries to look across our region at the shared interests, the shared goals, the way the communities within the region interact with one another. And within that, it is important to recognize, and that I think is one of the things this recommendation has attempted to do, that different communities are in different places. So those regional goals, as applied to the city of Sherwood, may look different than they look in practice as applied to other cities around the region. So what I think that the task in front of us is to hold those regional values up, to look at how we want to incentivize and structure the type of growth that creates the kind of communities this region is known for, which is a little bit more dense, often a little bit more vibrant, often close to natural areas, but also recognizing, as you have said, that each of these communities is in a different place on that spectrum and may need slightly different things to move that forward. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much. I mean, it doesn't get to the nitty gritty, but it's my contention that communities have the responsibility to respond to our regional goals, to state regulations and guidelines, but also to respond to their local needs and their local community integrity. So it's a complex process, and I understand that the regional aspect is one. I'll have other comments later, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Did I miss anything, Aaron, that you think?
No, I think I'll just put out, when it comes to the nitty gritty, as you said, our functional plan has certain requirements for their comprehensive planning process. And this is a process that follows an expansion of the growth boundary where a community sets their goals and expectations for that future growth. We have some requirements that help integrate those regional priorities during that process. But from there on, most of that is a local decision, and the local zoning and the local regulations come into play after that. And that's one of the functional ways in which we work towards that balance.
Can I add one quick follow-up?
Sure.
Is it true, I think, that what we've learned in this process that, and we require concept plans, but I think we have identified that we need to be a little bit more specific on what those concept plans need to entail. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That is part of the COO and staff recommendation, were some very specific recommendations for changes that Metro could make in the future when setting expectations for concept plans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks. You have been busy, shouldering a lot, and thanks for that effort. There was a question that came up last night at the impact meeting about the governor's superpower to by executive order, add acreage to any UGB. Well, maybe it's just the Metro UGB. And as I understood your answer, and I want to clarify it here, you said that you included 0 acres in your assumption of available land within the UGB for the possibility that she's announced that she might add 373. You have assumed nothing will proceed with that. Is that right?
What I said last night was that our staff is still working to understand the ramifications of this action. We're learning about it as the public is learning about it. There's a public meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're working to understand what it means. You're right that going into this process, when we produced the urban growth report that was released in July, there was no information about an addition or what that acreage would be in a way that allowed us to consider it and do analysis.
Understand that you're still working on it, but as of now, the number is 0 in what you consider to be available land.
There has not been time to reopen the urban growth report at this point with new information.
Seems a pretty simple question, but I understand you want to put some nuance to it. Is that true also of individual cities' authority that will become effective January 1st to add one time only 50 or 100 acres? We've assumed 0 from any of that in our analysis.
That's right. That legislation provided for an alternative process for expanding the growth boundary that is different from the one we're talking about today.
Thanks.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Yeah, thanks. I also want to echo my appreciation for the hard work that's gone into this and bring together stakeholders and to continue to grow trust and accountability in Metro's process has been something very important to me. So I really appreciate your hard work in that. One of the questions that I have, so in the report, we talk about the different baseline scenarios. We have the low growth scenario, baseline growth scenario, and high growth scenario. Can you talk about in kind of the staff technical analysis, how is it that we arrived to the recommendation, and what are the kind of the indicators that point us to that, and what elements give the council discretion to work within those?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, you're right. And the urban growth report itself provides data and information that is in ranges. But the baseline for both population growth and for employment growth are based on staff's professional experience as the most likely to occur. That's what the baseline means. Not only was that based on staff's analysis, but all of the important professionals that we brought in to review that as peer review, including demographers and economists from around the state. So that is the direction that was confirmed and that has the most, according to all of us, the most likelihood of occurring. However, council does have leeway in deciding where to fall on those ranges. Any of that plays into the outcome of what the resulting land need is. So if you assume more growth, then the resulting land need will be different. So the COO recommendation recommends a baseline analysis, a baseline for growth in terms of housing and economic growth, and the resulting need is a need that can be met by Sherwood's concept plan information.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions for staff at this time? All right. Seeing none, thank you. Much appreciated for all of the work to get us to this point. More to come. All right. We will move on to invited testimony. We are joined by representatives from both the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, or MPAC, and Metro's Committee on Racial Equity, or CORE. Counselors, in the interest of time, I hope that we can keep our council discussion today after this brief to maximize the time available for our presenters and public testimony. We will begin with MPAC. represented by Impact Chair and Washington County Commissioner Pam Trace. Good to see you today. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome.
First of all, I want to start with thanking you for taking this testimony from MPAC, and I want to underscore the fact that I'm here representing the MPAC committee. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the counselors that have been involved in MPAC throughout the year. Counselor Nolan, Counselor Wong, and Counselor Rosenthal. Their presence throughout this process has been very valuable, and they've been interactive in the discussions, and it was greatly appreciated to have that contact point. We had an eventful meeting last night. I think it might be characterized I heard it characterized as legendary. I heard it characterized as epic. There are a number of different points. We did go half an hour over, which is very unusual for an MPAC meeting. We had some issues with quorum. MPAC has issues with quorum throughout. We've had issues throughout the year. We had some telecommunication issues as well to keep quorum. So it was eventful. And I also want to appreciate the staff last night for keeping us integrated and on point here. It was tough, and there were roll call votes taken. It was an eventful evening. Your attorney, Roger, was wonderful. He really did provide us perspective on what we could do and what we couldn't do. So I want to tell you that we had testimony from 5 members of the public. We also, that's including a member from the youth cohort that was attached to the MPAC process here for the recommendation, Jacob Apenis, and he did a great job. The process has been really interesting watching over the past several months, the engagement of the staff with MPAC. Both Mr. Reed and Ms. Key have been integral in providing up to the minute reports on what's happening. And I saw them interacting not only with MPAC, but also with the staff at the city of Sherwood. We've been through this before. This is not a new process, and we've seen processes that were not like this, that were combative, that were difficult. And I would go so far as to say this one, while being difficult, was respectful. And I think that that's an important piece to recognize here, is that there was a great deal of respect from both staffs, from the mayor, from your leadership here. And I was really, really pleased to see that process. I want to appreciate the new engagement approaches that were applied this year, including the UGR roundtable and the youth cohort that I mentioned earlier. I'm also grateful that CORE has been involved in the process and has helped us think about how we as a region might approach applying an equity lens throughout the work that we're doing. So thank you for that. The members of MPAC were engaged and passionate about the topic, as you can imagine. But as I said earlier, they were respectful of each other's opinions. There was, frankly, I think that there was grace in the room, and I appreciated that. Bottom line is the members voted in favor of recommending the COO staff recommendation for approval to the Metro Council with 3 amendments. There was also one amendment that was considered but did not pass, and that amendment focused on increasing density expectations in the Sherwood West concept plan area and applying Metro's regionally significant industrial area requirements. That amendment did not pass. I'm going to go over the 3 amendments that did pass. The first amendment specified that the Metro Council adopt the high growth forecast instead of the baseline forecast. The second amendment specified that Metro agree to create and host a task force highlighting opportunities for creating growth and capacity models that are more reflective of market realities. Senior staff will participate in a task force ending no later than the mid 2025 with a report back to Metro Council. The goal will be to work with local jurisdictions and private sector partners to address the employment land challenges identified through the UGR process, including but not limited to slope and lot size. The final amendment specified that Metro shall not impose any additional requirements on the City of Sherwood that are not articulated in the Sherwood West Concept Plan. I also want to emphasize that the process that we went through followed Robert's Rules of Order, and it was difficult sometimes to keep that on task, but I believe that we got there. I'd like to make a couple closing comments and then see if there's any questions from the council. We know that Metro staff are working to analyze the implications of these amendments. We understand that it's been talked about in your questions with your staff report here this morning, especially the recommendations to use the high growth scenario. We look forward to hearing Metro Council's discussion on this topic in the future. MPAC recognizes the magnitude of this decision for the council, and we hope that the council can appreciate the local interests as well. As political leaders, we are all subject to much information. It takes bold and brave action, and that's a quote from Mayor Joe Buck. It takes brave and bold action for our cities to develop concept plans for growth. And I also believe that at the local level, our elected leaders face challenges like being recalled. We've seen it, we know it's real, and which changes their ability to effectively serve their communities. So what I'm saying is, while MPAC respects the difficult situation you will face, we also ask that you respect the difficult situation that the local leaders face as well. So in closing, I'd like to say that the region needs to be able to accommodate the future growth that supports our region's economy and housing needs, and we trust council to make those decisions appropriately. Thank you. Do you have questions for me?
I have one observation, then if there's any questions. I think a lot of the grace, while there was a lot of folks at MPAC and a lot of good discussion, the leadership that you provide in that space is much appreciated. And I think setting the tone is very helpful. And so just thank you, because this is a hard process and a hard conversation, and setting that respectful tone is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Councilors.
Councilor Wong.
Yeah, if I could just add to that.
First off, on every topic.
Oh, I guess that's just today.
Just today.
I'm excited. But I just wanted to express my appreciations for you, Chair, for your guidance and leadership yesterday. It was definitely a dramatic and an eventful meeting, and you had to be quick on your feet. So thank you so much. And I also wanted to thank the staff here at Metro for all the work that you all have done in taking in the data and balancing all the needs and then presenting that in a meaningful way to the committee. So I want to express my appreciations for, generally the process overall of, arriving at this point at MPAC. And just want to extend my thanks to Roger and Malou for helping with the process, and Ted and Aaron for all the technical knowledge.
Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Chair Treese, thank you so much for your leadership on Impact. And as my Washington County Commissioner in Beaverton, I appreciate your leadership not only in Washington County, but committing to regionalism and finding the ways for all of us to aspire towards a common direction, common goal, while also recognizing the tremendous diversity of our geography, of our communities, and I really appreciate you highlighting the importance for celebrating, acknowledging, respecting local leadership as well. I think highlighting the challenges of growth and the opportunities of growth are very real, and we've seen that in the region, not only in the last 1 or 2 years, but over the last 20 years, as you know. And importantly, with the recommendations from MPAC, I know they're hot off the press. There's a full commitment for me to work with our staff to really understand them to the core. And importantly, I'm curious about the third that you mentioned, which is Metro shall not add additional conditions to the Sherwood proposal. If you could help comment more in terms of the spirit of deliberation that happened during MPAC, and if there's anything else. And if you can't at this time, I understand. Happy to follow up.
I can tell you, and I would also defer to those of you that were in the room. That amendment came at about 7:15, 7:10, and there was limited discussion about the amendment. I think that I can reflect back to the previous meeting, and we had a meeting on September 11th to discuss the process and to ask any questions. And there was a fair amount of discussion there about issues like affordability and how affordability is important to all of us, and especially important to the city of Sherwood. We also need to be respectful of the funding mechanisms that are necessary to make that happen. So there was concern about that condition, if you will, being aspirational versus being mandated without funding. That's for example one.
Thank you so much. That answered.
Thank you. Councilor Rosenthal?
If I might, just on that point, since the chair asked for
go ahead.
checking, the language of the amendment that failed did not set a requirement. It set an expectation. Didn't use the word aspirational goal, but it wasn't a requirement.
I wasn't referring to the amendment that failed. I was referring to the previous discussion on September 11th when we, as MPAC, were discussing the issues, the 4 conditions that we saw in the COO's recommendation.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Trees for running a great meeting. It went long, but it was, as you say, respectful, and we got through a lot of complicated motions, and some of them, as you know, were a little long, and it's always hard to do them on the fly and consider them. I think that's very important. I want to make a comment. One of the motions that was defeated called for, and whether it was a requirement or an expectation of 12 units per acre, and I think 4,100 units overall in the development, and that was one that failed. You'd have to look at the exact wording of whether it was expectations or a requirement. But my question is, one of the amendments which said MPAC would prefer a high growth scenario, and I'd like you to opine on whether on the discussion MPAC had regarding the connection between a high growth scenario for the urban growth report and how that affects Sherwood. In other words, to what extent Sherwood is responsible for adjusting their proposal to deal with a high growth thing. I think it's a complicated technical issue that many people don't quite understand.
Thank you for the question, Councilman. I want to take just a minute and say that I believe, and I may be extrapolating a bit here, so I believe that MPAC wants and requests that the council do both. So not expect the city of Sherwood to increase their numbers, but now and into the future recognize that the processes behind the establishment of the growth scenarios be clearly understood and be more widely trusted. I'm going to use that term.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
I'm looking. Hold on. We've got folks online, that's why.
Can I go last comment?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Chair Trees, I want to thank you because you just described a legendary meeting for the night before. And if we're talking about regional aspirations, all of our regional meetings should be legendary. But you know, I really want to.
By definition, that can't be true.
I really want to acknowledge that you're that now you're in a position bringing a recommendation to us, reflecting what I am understanding to be a fierce debate and a positive debate about about how we go from here. And I think just want to acknowledge that, and I really appreciate you trying to carry that and bring the full perspective of what impact has talked about. And I want to make sure that we share that as a council.
Thank you. And I also want to reinforce my comments about the staff and the responsiveness, the lack of defensiveness, and the positive nature of the discussion in the room. So, and on both sides, but I really respect your staff for taking into consideration a lot of the features that were and questions that were being asked. So all these things work both ways. So thank you as well.
Thank you for acknowledging, and thank you for staff work. Thank you. All right. Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Treese. We now have 3 members of CORE, our Committee on Racial Equity, that are wanting to come forward as part of invited testimony. We have Tamisha Turner, our CORE co-chair. Serom Yu, I had it right the first time. CORE co-chair, and Tristan Penn, former CORE co-chair and UGB roundtable participant. Who wants to kick us off?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Am I close enough to the mic?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. President Lynn Peterson and Metro Councilors, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you all about Sherwood's urban growth proposal. My name is Seram Yu, and I co-chair the Committee on Racial Equity with Tamisha Turner. We are 13 BIPOC immigrant and refugee community members convened to advise council on matters that impact racial equity in our region. We've been engaged in this UGB process since late last year, which is quite unusual. Usually we have maybe one topic per month or maybe one topic for 2 months, but not this many months. And so while we have submitted recommended conditions of approval in writing for your consideration for the Sherwood proposal, we also wanted to step back because we had a lot of reflections and observations about the process as a whole that I think y'all could benefit from hearing about, and hopefully apply some best practices, updated best practices to future public decision-making processes, not just UGB, but others, transportation, recycling, so on and so forth. And we would love to get an update within 3 months on how Council has decided to incorporate this feedback into future Metro decisions. I want to start with some takeaways, and then Tamisha will follow with more specific recommendations. Our first takeaway is that the UGB process tokenized CORE and other people of color. While we're grateful that CORE was invited to weigh in on the UGB process, it was immediately clear that racial equity was an afterthought. As volunteers who meet for 1 2-hour meeting per month, we felt rushed to properly understand the topic, Sherwood's plan, and analyze its racial equity impacts. CORE members and other people of color who were invited to the roundtable felt unwelcome and dismissed. They immediately noted a lack of data justice, but their questions and concerns were disregarded. CORE feels strongly that without data justice, we cannot make data-based decisions on racial equity. This is why we've also submitted a recommendation on how Metro can implement data equity and justice specifically, and Tristan will be speaking on that next. Our next takeaway is that there was little to no connection between the UGB process and Metro's strategic plan to advance racial equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the climate smart strategy. CORE members and other volunteers felt as though there was a large and substantial gap between Metro's codified 106-page commitment to the implementation of racial equity and how we experience the UGB process. The group's experience of the UGB process largely did not reflect any sort of consistent and intentional dissemination of the tenets of the Spiretti in project management, community engagement, or data equity. Metro staff presenting on the subject also did not articulate any sort of incorporation of Spiretti goals. In CORE's interactions with the City of Sherwood staff, we were again surprised to observe such little consideration for racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. Subject matter experts seem to think the UGB is purely about land. Yet land has repeatedly been used to kill, abuse, exploit, marginalize Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander people in our history. As a committee, we have not observed that Metro or Sherwood understand the seriousness of this history and the real threat of repeating it. I would like to turn it over to Tamisha to share our recommendations.
Thank you. Here's a list of our recommendation. We are recommending to bake racial equity and inclusion criteria into current and future processes from the beginning, starting with a concept plan, using them to guide decision making, determine key partners, and social impact, to train and educate every Metro staff so they understand the historical and ongoing racial equity impacts of their department. Evaluate Metro's data to ensure data justice, evaluate Metro's methodologies in creating inclusive environment for community engagement and update best practices. Invest in proper resources and time to allow thoughtful engagement with groups like CORE to minimize harm and loss of trust. Commit to authentic and accountability community engagement based on transparency and sincere relationship building. Respect and accept disenfranchised community members' lived experience as guiding compass. Avoid manufacturing urgency and targeting. And above all, a call to action, center human and whole regional impact. Land use is never just about land. In conclusion, counselors, we would like to thank you again for the opportunity to speak about the UGB process that stands to impact our region's community for decades. We hope our reflection can support you in building a current and future Metro where racial equity is intentionally centered rather than an afterthought. In future public decision making processes, we cannot wait another 6 years to put in place what we can do and act now. We are available and eager for ongoing conversations in the spirit of continued growth and learning. Thank you. Now I'll pass it over to my colleague, Tristan.
Hi, my name is Tristan Penn. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the former chair 4 years with Metro's Committee on Racial Equity. And so I've been doing a lot of this work alongside Seyram and Tanisha, as well as the DEI department as well. And I just want to underscore all of the tenets and things that my colleagues have brought up and brought to light too. I know at times it may feel a little like tense as well too, but I think that's where a lot of growth and learning is, as both individuals as well as as an organization, which Metro is a big organization. So one thing that I want to drill down on too, I know we spoke broadly about some recommendations, but I think as someone who is a part of the UGB roundtable process, one thing that became very evident to me was just a lack of data equity. And how there is a lot of analysis that feels not washed through a lens of racial equity. More importantly, the SPARETI, which is also the strategic plan for racial equity that you all are. If you're playing acronym bingo, that's what it is. So I wanted to just highlight a few things that I notice in my experience of being a part of that UGB process and how it intersects with my former work with CORE. And just highlight a few things and recommendations that I would love to talk more about if you have questions about. As someone who in their day job works for a tech organization as a director, this is something very near and dear to my heart because I think oftentimes marginalized communities, historically marginalized communities, specifically centered around race. As someone who inhabits two identities, I'm half Black and I'm half Navajo, this is very important to me in making sure that data is representative and washed through in a way that's looked through through a lens of racial equity, not just at that point, but also throughout the entire work of it all. So the recommendations are develop a framework for data equity and justice for current processes as well as ongoing and future processes. The second recommendation is collaborate more intentionally with Metro's DEI department. I think that there is a wealth of knowledge not only within the DEI department, but also within CORE. We are all professionals, degreed professionals that work in the community and in surrounding communities that have a lot to offer. And then recommendation 3 is provide consistent professional development on the Sporetti throughout Metro. That's not exclusive to just the DEI department. That should be pretty uniform as much as it can be for a large organization across all departments too. One glaring inequity I found was that some departments that were showing up to the UGB process, some of the language and some of the ways in which they were analyzing the data lacked a lens for racial equity. And I think as someone who's a part of CORE or has been a part of CORE as a coded committee, those are things that we look for. We want that. So I think there's a lot more to be discussed about it, but I think those are the top 3 recommendations that I think really should be considered and not only by council, but also, everyone in the room that has skin in the game. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I guess I just want to your points, just say, I think a public apology that if folks did feel tokenized, that we need to do better and we will move forward from here. And I really appreciate, again, the tone and the forward-looking constructive comments that you've brought to the table, and that's really helpful to know where to place priority and how to look at this as we go forward. So just thank you for coming out and saying what needed to be said. And I know that just talking to the mayor of Sherwood, very interested in moving a similar conversation within the city of Sherwood forward. So a commitment on moving forward and doing better. I don't want to talk on behalf of the entire community of Sherwood, but I just know that he relayed that to me. So I'm just reflecting what he said. I think the other thing I just want to note is the 3 months deadline. What I'd just like is a slight tweak to that. I'd like to suggest that we have a work session after the urban growth management decision has been made on the backside of 2025. It's very keen in my mind to have, it might be several work sessions, just looking at how we could do this process differently going forward. I think we've heard little tweaks that are warranted from a lot of different places, and I'd love to get all of those on the table as we go forward. I don't want to go into those in depth, but just how we carry this process through. We keep learning each time we do this, and this process this time was slightly better than the last, and we can make it even better for the future. So of course, all those recommendations will be to almost a completely different council in 6 years. Some of us will be here, some of us won't. But at least we can make those recommendations and ask staff to carry those forward, right? So, but I think it's important to get lessons learned out as soon as we're done. So I appreciate that. Council, any questions, comments? Councilor Wong.
My first again. Thank you, Madam President. And thank you to the co-chairs and Tristan. Before I was on this side of the table, I was also a CORE member, and it just really warms my heart to hear what you had to say today. That took a lot of courage, and it took a lot of expertise, and it took a lot of organizing amongst the other committee members. So thank you for doing that. I know it's hard for us to hear, but it's what we needed to hear. And this is why CORE is so important to, our agency in this region is y'all are pushing and paving the way, and this changes practices all across the region. Like President Peterson said, we're pushing the envelope, not here just at Metro, but with our jurisdictional partners as well. So thank you for speaking up. Thank you for that courage, and look forward to working with you in the next 3 months and for years to come.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate the efforts that CORE has made to look into this. Your comments are both insightful and very important. I fully support them, and I support President Peterson in saying these are some things that we need to take action on. I think it's it shows the system needs work, and we need to make tweaks, and we need to make changes in some cases. I do have a question though. Your comments were primarily regarding process and how we can improve the process. I was a little concerned when you said, that it seemed that some of the staff did not seem to be fully aware of the need to deal with these issues. Should the council approve the Sherwood expansion request, and then of course that process follows, they have to develop zoning and planning and all this other stuff going forward. Are there structural problems embedded in that proposal that would make it hard to incorporate the changes, or impossible to incorporate the changes you recommend? Or can they be implemented inside of that process? In other words, can we move forward with, if it were approved?
We believe that they can be incorporated while as they develop their comprehensive plan, and so and that's why we also submitted some written recommendations for conditions of approval, because while there were a lot of things missing, we understand that there's also opportunity to build upon it and iterate, and we are hoping that you will have the authority to incorporate some of our concepts and ideas.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Well, I want to thank y'all for coming today and sharing what needed to be said from your experience. Before you, Commissioner Treese was here talking about brave and bold leadership, and that is exactly what I see in you and in CORE. And I see it not only as a statement of next steps, but also the practice that we want to have in this agency, which is we've stated these goals about how we want to operate, how we want to develop policy, and holding us to that account of reaching to that level. So I really appreciate President Peterson extending our deepest apology, and I think we all own that on the council. And we're in a lot of ways we're building this ship as it goes out into uncharted waters. But there's a huge need there, and I didn't want to let this testimony end without really appreciating that you're here to share that, and the commitment that I feel personally as well to improve the process. Not only in the next 3 months, because we will be responding in the next 3 months. I heard that loud and clear, and then back throughout 2025 and in the future for Metro's urban growth management process. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'm delighted that I have an opportunity in my role as a Metro Councilor to work with you on a regular basis and to see the wisdom, the insight, the collaboration that you all bring to advising us. I have a question and then a follow-up comment. I did observe also that your comments today were focused on process, as I understand, because that affects the next 7 generations. But during CORE meetings, I heard discussion about, particularly around racial equity impacts that would flow if the Sherwood Concept Plan were implemented as presented, particularly around housing affordability, access to Sherwood for communities of color. Did you have comments that you wanted to share with us about that?
Are you speaking about the region as a whole, or like Sherwood's?
I'm just inviting you to share some of that discussion from CORE that hasn't been mentioned yet during your meetings.
Sorry, if I may take a second.
I can't answer too. I just want to say that I'm a former member, so I'm not privy to the actual meetings that have happened since I've termed off. But so just wanted to add that.
I mean, so we did have concerns that there wasn't enough community oversight and community engagement with their concept plan, and we were concerned that certain voices would be left out of that. And you know, so we spoke with the city of Sherwood staff to help clarify those concerns, and accordingly added our conditions, recommended conditions of approval regarding community oversight and community engagement, so that the right voices are at the table, not just the majority voice. I think, one of the things that we observed is that the city of Sherwood multiple times noted how white their city is. And and reading between the lines, I kind of read that as dismissive of, the small percentage of people of color who do live and work there. And so, and that is why we asked for more proactive and more rigorous community engagement, so that we're not just setting up the table and asking people to show up with whatever barriers and circumstances that they have, but making the effort to go to people and on their terms, and meeting needs and lowering barriers so that they can adequately engage, and just asking them to be a lot more proactive about that.
Thank you, Tristan.
Yeah, I had one
And then we're
thing
going to close this portion down. Sorry, because we have 45 minutes and then we have a hard stop at 1.
Sorry.
So go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to also add with that too, there was a question I asked during the UGB roundtable around like how Sherwood was incorporating any sort of like tenets of racial equity. Considering we have a 106-page Sporetti, I would assume that they were at least aware of it. It seemed like at times, I asked a question like, how are you implementing it? And they were like, oh, well, we have a community committee, and that seemed that put up some feelers for me, and I shared with my colleagues about that too. That maybe that was something we needed to explore further. And I'll just add, and all of this too. I know this is like really hard to good things as you all have noted too, but I also just want to say that Aaron and Catherine did an excellent job of the time that we did have too, and it was really great. And there were a lot of really great shining moments in dialogue during my time with UGB Roundtable. So I don't want to like paint it all as that. And I want to thank all of their work, because there was a lot of really hard work and a lot of like iterative and dynamic discussions throughout the process, and they did make a lot of really great. We met with Marissa at one point too, and so there was some changes and tweaks that we did appreciate moving forward, middle of the stream. So I just wanted to like also name that and note that for the testimony as well.
And just one last thing is that we did meet with other community members who had concerns whether or not it would be the expansion would have economical impact to other regional projects. And so regarding housing, acres to houses, more green space in Shorewood, less in other developing projects within the region, and also to climate effects.
Thank you. Thank you for that quick summary, and thank you for acknowledging the midstream work. And really, again, appreciation to staff. So thank you.
It's really appreciated.
Yeah.
I had one final comment.
Okay, we still have a lot of folks for public testimony, so go ahead.
Fine. Omissions and affronts and failure to see don't just happen on their own. And as a Metro counselor, since I'm associated with Metro, I want to acknowledge that you did experience omissions and shortcomings and affronts from this organization. And I want to acknowledge our collective responsibility for it and apologize that I, in some small way, allowed it to happen to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We will now move on to our urban growth management public hearing on the chief operating officer recommendations. I will now open up the public comment period. Georgia, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for public comment? And also note again that hard stop at 1 p.m. and we are going to get as many people through as we possibly can. Thank you, Georgia.
Yes, if anyone wishes to testify on agenda item 6.1, now is the time to do so. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes, I'll manage a timer to go off at the 2-minute mark. If you have not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you are joining us on Zoom, you can sign up to testify by raising your hand on Zoom. Depending on your version of Zoom, the raise hand function has its own tab or is located within the reactions tab. Those calling in can raise their hands by dialing *9. If you are joining us in person, you can sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room. For those joining us on Zoom, I will promote you to a full panelist when it is your turn to testify. I will call on your name or number when it is your turn to testify, and a window will appear asking you to accept being promoted as a panelist. Once you click accept, your Zoom window will close for just a brief moment before you rejoin as a panelist, where you will be able to turn on your camera if you like. You do not need to give your physical address. However, please introduce yourself for the record before testifying. First up, we have Jeffrey Kleinman, and on deck, we have Troy Williver. And we're trying to get through as many as possible, so when you're on deck, get ready to hustle. Thank you.
And we will continue the hearing. Don't worry, there'll be another opportunity. Go ahead. Good morning.
Chair and Councilor Jeff Kleinman. I'm the attorney for the West of Sherwood Farm Alliance, which is opposed to this proposal. As some of you know, I've been around for a while, and it's been a while since I've seen, regardless of the extensive process, a pig in the poke like this and a jump the line proposal like this. And if, regardless of conditions, you think it is going to produce any affordable or workforce housing, I'd ask you to think several times again, because it won't and it's not intended. And one sign of that is that Sherwood has not applied for any of the available funding for affordable housing. I want to talk a little bit about industrial employment lands. The draft urban growth report analysis concluded there's a surplus of industrial lands in the region, regardless of what the council believes the level of population and employment growth will be. Nonetheless, the chief operating officer has recommended approving this expansion to provide 250-acre flat parcels in the North District for high-tech manufacturing. But the Sherwood West concept plan, like its prior versions and the supporting economic opportunity analysis, make it quite clear the lands in the North District are to be developed in small acreage sites in office, industrial, and flex space parks, similar to what is being developed in the Tonkin employment area. The concept plan states the city will not impose large minimum lot standards. Just want to finish with one thought. The recommendation also assumes there are at least 250-acre parcels in the North District that are flat and fully developable, but the city's own materials show smaller parcels, significant slopes, a high voltage BPA transmission line, parcels bisected by Chicken Creek, and Class 1 and Class A habitat areas, all protected by Metro Titles 3 and 13. We ask that this proposed expansion be denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Next up, we have Troy Williver, and then on deck, we have David Namarnik.
David, you can come forward and get ready.
Madam President, councilors, good morning. Thank you. My name is Troy Williver, and I live and own on 20 acres in Sherwood, 97140. I'm a supporter of the West of Sherwood Farm Alliance. The Chief Operating Officer has recommended adding 1,291 acres to the urban growth boundary based on this land's supposed contribution to meeting the region's need for affordable housing. This justification is contradicted by Sherwood's own clearly expressed preferences for expensive market rate, low density, single family housing. At the Metro Technical Advisory Committee meeting on August 28th, starting around minute 23, Sherwood's planning director, Eric Rutledge, made it very clear that the base density range for their housing forecast was 6.2 homes per acre. He said the city would reject a condition requiring an average density of 16 units per acre, which would mean, according to him, that one half of the new housing would be middle housing. 6.2 homes per acre means single-family homes on 5,000 to 6,000 square foot lots. The homes currently for sale on lots of 5,000 to 7,500 square feet are priced on Zillow at between 535,000 to 800,000. According to Zillow, the average home price in Sherwood is 637,000. Assuming you're willing to pay 30% of your pre-tax income on housing, you would need a household income of at least $140,000 to afford $637,000 in a house. The U.S. Census reported that as of 2022, the median family income in the Portland-Vancouver region was a bit less than $90,000. According to multiple online sources, average rents in Sherwood are $2,000 to $2,500. Households earning $90,000 or more could afford $2,000 per month, but not $2,500. How does this Sherwood West concept plan proposal for low-density single-family housing square up with Sherwood's own 2019 housing needs analysis? It doesn't. This month, the Oregon Department of Administrative Services issued its draft of statewide housing needs analysis, which includes draft goals for the metro region at Sherwood. 44% of the region's new housing and 56% of Sherwood's must be affordable to households with 80% or less of the median family income. So where does this leave the one half of residents of the region with average or below average incomes?
If you could wrap up, thanks.
Certainly does not in Sherwood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, next up we have David Namarnik, and I'm actually going to call 4 people to be sitting. I'm going to call 4 people on deck. One person speaks, then they go back, and I'll call the next one. Does that make sense? So we have David Namarnik, who's going to speak now, and then Stu Peterson is next, and then Diane Jarvis and Michael Gochner. If you can all come up and sit, or I'll promote you to a panelist on Zoom. Thank you very much.
You can literally come forward and
You can come forward and sit right at the mics, and then we'll just have you.
That'd be too easy.
There we go.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Go ahead, David.
Council President Peterson and Metro Council, thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm testifying in opposition to the West Sherwood expansion. My topic is absence of any alternative to the Sherwood West UGB expansion proposal. I live on LeBeau Road. My family and I farm hazelnuts and grapes on our family's 262 acres, including land directly adjacent to the expansion area. I'm a supporter of the West of Sherwood Farm Alliance. The Alliance's analysis, which you have a copy of, and what could be developed on the vacant land inside the city of Sherwood, the Brookman and Tonkin employment areas, show that Sherwood alone has enough vacant land to meet any need for additional housing jobs for the region and for Sherwood itself. Please read our 2 analysis documents, Sherwood Vacant Lands Capacity 1, Employment, and 2, Housing, and the associated large investment needed for the growth. The analysis also documents a thoughtful and well-reasoned approach that accommodates Sherwood growth through 2044 without expanding the UGB. Why did Sherwood have to do this work and not your staff? Your staff never bothered to consider and propose to you an alternative for your consideration. The only alternative they considered was Sherwood's proposal, which was developed by and to serve Sherwood needs, or rather the needs or vision of the mayor and the city council. This is part of a pattern of Metro focusing all the attention on UGB expansions in Washington County as if the needs of communities in Multnomah and Clackamas counties are irrelevant to the region's future. The Metro Council has a responsibility to consider regional needs from a regional perspective and not passively respond to a proposal from one city in a region worth 24 cities and parts of 3 counties. Please direct your staff to give you one or more alternatives to consider before this approval as proposed. I have a few seconds. I just want to say that I think we can do better. I think the chance to use lands already within Sherwood to create more walkable, dense, and affordable neighborhoods that really support community is right before us, and it's going to be a missed opportunity if all these lands are approved as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Stu Peterson. Is that you? I do not see Stu in the audience either on Zoom, so we will go to Diane Jarvis. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Diane Jarvis, and I live just outside the proposed expansion area. I am a supporter of the West of Sherwood Farm Alliance. The Alliance commissioned an analysis of what could be developed on the vacant land already inside of Sherwood, plus the land inside the Brookman area and the Tonkin employment area that were previously added to the UGB. You have a short summary and you have the full analysis. Metro's Data Resource Center identified more than 205 acres of vacant land in various residential zones and another 130 acres of vacant land in future urban and rural zones. This vacant land could support over 4,500 new homes, a mix of single-family detached, attached, middle housing, and multifamily homes. It includes 410 moderate income homes for people who work in the nearby vineyards, are teachers or school district employees, and who work in stores, hotels, and restaurants in Sherwood. And as someone has already said, the average cost is approaching $640,000 for an average price home with rents at $2,000 to $2,500 a month. And I note that there are no affordable housing bond projects in Sherwood today. The range of housing in this analysis is a much closer fit with the state's, Metro's, and Sherwood's housing needs and assessments. The proposed Sherwood West UGB expansion is unnecessary to meet regional housing needs. You should reject the COO recommendation and direct the staff to prepare an alternate ordinance meeting infill and infill and redevelopment. And a final personal note, I don't see how you can have a ton of cost and not raise the density and have more affordable housing.
Thank you.
Great. Next we have Michael Gochner, and then we have Clayton Mady on deck. I'll promote you up to a panelist. And then if Alyssa Palmer would like to come up, as well as Brian Weissman and Peter Foster, that would be great. You are all on deck. Thank you.
Good morning, council members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Michael Gochner, and I stand here in strong support of the adoption of the entire Sherwood West concept plan. I've been fortunate enough to call Oregon home for 48 of my 52 years, and throughout my career in real estate, spanning from brokerage, development, general contracting, and development consulting, I have witnessed firsthand the critical need for responsible housing development and housing affordability, which continues to slip beyond the reach of many. The current housing situation in Sherwood, which was reflected with the previous presenters today, reflects the pressing need. The average home price is $637,000, while the average household income is $103,000. And based on that rule of thumb, again, which was presented earlier, 30% of your gross income in Sherwood, residents face a burdensome 40% of that ratio. And for renters, the situation is similarly challenging, as you know, $1,500 to $1,700 for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms are $2,100 to $23,000. Without the timely addition of new housing inventory, I fear Sherwood will be increasingly unaffordable. Land availability within Sherwood's current urban growth boundary is particularly constrained for mid-size and large-scale development, with existing acreage priced between $560,000 and $600,000 per acre. Should new inventory come to the market, I expect housing costs are going 10 to 15% higher. Expanding the UGB to include new developable land is essential to mitigating these costs and increases. While the cost of material has begun to stabilize after COVID, induced spikes in labor costs are a key development in construction, have rarely seen reductions over the past year. So the only area where affordability can be addressed is through the availability of land. So on a personal note, I'll skip to the bottom here. Just as a healthy lake thrives with balanced ecosystems, sustainable resource management, and the responsible stewardship of nature, environment, so does a healthy city. A growing city like Sherwood requires steady planned development that avoids overwhelming infrastructure, preserves affordability, and basically the Sherwood West concept plan embodies that balance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I love these personal notes in the last 15 seconds.
Yeah.
I love the trend line. Let's just keep going.
Great, thank you. And Clayton, you are ready to go.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Clayton. I certainly appreciate the chance to speak on this matter. It's something I'm very passionate about and very involved in. It occupies most of my day, every day in my professional life. I'm a real estate broker at a local company here called McAdam Forbes. I focus mostly on industrial product or employment in this context for both land sales and building leasing. And I can just tell you anecdotally, in the marketplace, we have an unbelievable, starvation for land. The need for more available lands is very, very robust. There's significant demand and very limited supply. And it's not healthy for the market. It's not normal. It's created a situation where prices are skyrocketing and affordability is very limited. So it's stifling economic development in this state. And that's something that I don't want to see as an Oregonian who's raised here. I want to continue to see Sherwood and Oregon globally grow smartly, which I think is possible. I'm working on a 265-acre industrial land site in Hillsboro, Oregon, which is all spoken for, by the way, already. And I think Hillsboro's laid out a pretty powerful plan as to how you can grow smartly and grow correctly. And I think Sherwood's positioned really well to do so. I think getting out ahead of land needs as opposed to getting behind them and reacting to them is smart from a planning perspective. I don't have enough time to go into the nuance of the things I work on and why I believe this land need is so urgent, but I would encourage anybody who's curious to get in touch with me. I'm always happy to get coffee. This is something I feel very strongly about and just discuss it. So I am in favor of the expansion. Obviously, with anything, there are going to be pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages. That's not lost on me. I certainly hear the points of the opposition. Just personally, based on my experience in the real estate arena, I think the advantages outweigh far heavier in this case. So thanks for the opportunity to testify. Again, I am in favor of the expansion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Alyssa Palmer, and then on deck we have Amelia Larkin, if you'd like to come up or raise your hand. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having me today. My married name is Alyssa Geckner. I'm actually wife of Michael Geckner. I'm a lifelong resident of Oregon, and I am a licensed broker with a personal and professional interest in Sherwood as a future resident. I am committed to contributing to the growth and development of this wonderful community. I'm here today to express my full support for the Sherwood West expansion plan and urge that the entirety of the land be brought in to the urban growth boundary now. I think it's critical that we plan comprehensively for the future of Sherwood rather than delaying another cycle. Adopting the full plan now allows our city to hold the reins as we maintain control over our growth narrative. This ensures that we can address environmental challenges up front without piecemeal development that leads to urban sprawl. This expansion is forward-thinking, and it benefits our entire community by creating jobs and housing opportunities. This plan supports equitable economic development, providing space for local businesses to thrive, and offers diverse housing options that will serve first-time home buyers and families, and hopefully ours soon. In closing, I ask that you would seize the opportunity to support Sherwood's future, enable us to grow into one of Oregon's most thriving communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next we have Brian Weissman, and then on deck we have Danielle Silver.
Wait for the clock. So nice to see you guys all. I emailed you all a month ago, and just seeing you in the flesh is awesome. All right, I guess I've started. I'm here today. I actually drove down last night from Seattle to express my support for the Sherwood West expansion. I actually grew up in California, but my family, my parents moved up to Oregon back around the turn of the millennium, and I started coming to the state all the time. And every time I came here, I realized how much I loved Oregon. It really felt like home, even though I was living in Seattle for most of that span. And increasingly kind of towards, I don't know, maybe the last 3 or 4 years, I really started to take moving down here seriously. And I started going around to different neighborhoods around Portland and just checking them out. And when I came to Sherwood, it immediately felt different to me. It felt like home. And I toured around the place. The vibe was incredible. I went to cafes and restaurants. People were super nice and engaging, and it's really different from the way it is in Seattle. And then I found my way up to the west side of the city where I saw the magnificent brand new high school, and it really spoke to me. because it was this gigantic campus. And I was thinking, how many people are going here? And when I looked it up later on, I saw that it was meant to accommodate 2,400 people. And yet, based on all the information I've been able to see online, it only has like 1,700 students. The people who designed that high school were thinking about the future of this community, obviously. And it put me over the tipping point. I realized that I wanted Sherwood to be my future too. And so I invested in the community. And I've been watching from afar, really wanting to talk to you guys for years about the idea of moving down here. I would love to move down here. I am so sick of Seattle and I want to leave. And this community is perfect. It reminds me so much of my hometown in Palo Alto in so many ways, back from like the 70s and the 80s. And so I would love for my future also to include residency here. And I would love for that to be a possibility. So again, I've come here in support of passing the resolution to allow the Sherwood West expansion. Thanks so much for listening to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you're interested in doing a travel Portland video, we'd be happy to have you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Next, we have Amelia Larkin. Peter Foster just went, correct?
Yeah, Peter.
Okay.
No, I'm Brian. That's Peter.
Okay, Peter. Next, we have Peter Foster, and then we have Amelia Larkin, and then Damian Hall, and then Jane Butler after that. Thank you.
Good morning, Metro councilors, and thank you for your consideration on this plan. My name is Peter Foster, and I am the founder of Prodigal Sons, a diversified single farm restaurant that is proposed to be put here in Sherwood West. Single farm restaurants like Prodigal Sons are agri-hoods that lead to more investment in the area. Agri-hoods advance the quality of life and are symbols of sustainable practices, which we don't currently have in Sherwood. Without planned growth, we'll lose the future investment into the area. And when we get to another cycle, these principal arguments will be the same. If we don't pass it now, in 4 to 6 years, these arguments are all going to be the same thing. It's special interests protecting the few with the most, right? So these are not, the opposition doesn't represent the needs or opinions of Sherwood residents, nor do they acknowledge the many benefits of the plan. Instead, they confuse with numbers and call out granular inconsistencies and whatever else they can throw to see what sticks, right? Somebody earlier said, no farms, no food. Well, all the farms that I know of as a farmer myself in the area grow grass seed and pumpkins. It does not threaten, this plan does not threaten the food that is being put on our table. Metro needs to see that. You see a pumpkin once a year, and it's probably for decoration. These monocrops are scorching the environment, tapping the water tables, and we need more diversified farms, not more of this either tiny micro farm that doesn't supply any of the markets or commercial ag that really has done heavy impact to our ecosystems. So in conclusion, my question is, will Metro be an agency of hope for a brighter future and make the right decision this cycle, or will they bow to the agenda of the few with the most? Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. And Brian, you can also take your seat.
Cool.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Amelia Larkin, then Damian Hall. Jane Butler, you can come up or raise your hand. And then we also have Alexis Miller. Thank you very much. And if you're, yeah, thank you.
Hello, and thank you for your time. My name is Amelia Larkin, and I am here to lend my voice to support for the City of Sherwood's West Expansion Plan. Like many towns and cities, Sherwood is experiencing a housing shortage. Unlike many others, Sherwood has the chance to provide planned growth that will benefit the current and future residents of Sherwood. There are plenty of people citing statistics from a variety of studies that pander to their single interest group with a vested interest in maintaining their own particular concerns. Nothing in the opposition gives concrete and sustainable options to the housing crisis in Sherwood and Oregon at large. But this decision is more than that, and it is as simple as saying there's land in the 5-year-old plan, just use that. Growth is not instantaneous. Passing the expansion plan does not mean all of Sherwood is developed tomorrow. Waiting another 6 years to ponder will only create more what-ifs, not fewer, and proper growth will pass Sherwood by. True progress comes from building on the past with an eye to the future. Holding tight to what once was will kill any economic and social prosperity that Sherwood is poised to take. It is up to us as stewards of the town we love to pass the expansion plan and do our best for future generations. I ask the council, who is the plan for and who does it benefit? The purpose of these councils are to do their best by the community and majority of the residents, not to acquiesce to those whose very special interests serve only themselves and those like them. Sherwood is growing, whether people want it to or not, but we have a chance to guide that growth in a way that benefits all. Please think of all residents when choosing to support and pass this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Damian Hall, you are welcome to start. And then on deck, we have Jane Butler, Alexis Miller, who I believe is Alexis Beth on Zoom, but please let me know if that is not the case. And John Rankin and Terrell Smith. Thank you.
Damian.
Thank you. Council President Peterson, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. My name is Damian Hall. I'm here today in my role as a board member of the West Side Economic Alliance, or WEA. I'm pinch hitting for our executive director, Elizabeth Maserati Myers, who is traveling today abroad. So, the WEA was a member of the year-long Urban Growth Report Roundtable, and Elizabeth asked me to pass along the thanks to Metro's staff for all of their commitment to that work. WEA represents hundreds of employers, public, private, and nonprofit sector organizations, and tens of thousands of workers throughout the region, including Metro, who holds a seat on the board of directors. Thank you, Juan Carlos. WA's position is in support of the high growth forecast and the city of Sherwood expansion, consistent with the recommendation of the MPAC. I've heard a lot about the Sherwood expansion, so I'm going to just start off by talking a little bit about the high growth forecast. Some of the things that were noted in the urban growth report are that with the natural birth rate in decline, it's only through in-migration that we'll see population and job growth in coming decades. As a result, it's imperative that Metro take the lead and set the table for creation of the conditions necessary to attract employers and create jobs. And also, please keep in mind that the Urban Growth Report is really just the first step. All it does, I use that phrase, set the table. Let's keep options on the table for us to plan for the future. If we foreclose growth opportunities before they go through the process, there's no path to steady growth, which I see as the goal. Reasonable people can debate the speed of steady growth, but keeping options on the table is really what the high growth forecast is about. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Great. Now we have Jane Butler, and on deck is Alexis Miller, John Rankin, Terrell Smith, and then those people are on Zoom. So the folks that can come up are Indy Namkun and Mike Connors and Ron Bunch.
And before you start, apologies. If there is a quorum that can stay beyond one, then we have a little bit of extra time. Who on council is able to stay past one? 1, 2, 3. Check. Any hands up online?
I can stay half an hour.
Okay, we do have a quorum to continue on if you can take the reins at 1. Okay, a couple of us will have to leave. Apologies, but we do have a quorum to stay and finish out the testimony. So thank you, Georgia. Go ahead.
Great, you're good to go.
Gracious thank you, Madam President and councilors, and thank you to all who are here and present. My name's Jane, and I share on behalf of myself, my family, and my friends in support of the Sherwood West Expansion Plan in its entirety. I'm a speech-language pathologist with over 20 years experience treating impairments in breathing, eating, speaking, and communicating for people of all ages and abilities. Over several years, I have leveraged nutrition to support my health and that of my family, and I'm planning to open an on-trend whole nutrition-focused eatery on the west side of Sherwood. Market research reveals that at present, most Sherwood residents have to travel for work, needed services, and restaurant variety. But even if my hotspot offers tremendous appeal and value to the area, it may not survive after just 1 year without this plan going forward to optimize anticipated growth. The plan meets a wider urgent need in that it's consistent with my lived experience as a Sherwood parent and as an Oregon provider. Sherwood has one beautiful, enormous new high school. And our student population is top ranked and growing fast. the safety and development of its surroundings must keep pace. Students need close places to eat, to connect, to play, to work, to live, to hang out, and to belong. In a best case scenario, without this being furnished, many of our most talented and industrious will graduate and they will leave for opportunities elsewhere. Those who cannot afford this may fall into our worst case scenario, which would be that they could stay and become frustrated and disenfranchised. The Sherwood West Plan meets this need for place for all of us, for all people, by prioritizing residential areas, preserving treasured parkland, and just directly attracting and increasing employment opportunities at incredible service and destination businesses like the ones many of us hope to offer. Our world is changing really fast, and we don't want our kids left behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Right on the beat.
Okay, Alexis, you have been promoted up and you can speak. I'll start the timer when you speak.
Awesome, perfect. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, my name is Alexis Miller. I'm patching in from Seattle, and just for transparency, my husband is Brian Weissman, who spoke, I think, 3 people ago. I can't be there because I'm sick, but I super appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm going to read something that I wrote earlier. Council President Peterson and members of council, Sherwood has a remarkable history. In 1911, it was home to just 350 people and covered just 1 square mile. Today, it's grown to nearly 4.5 square miles, but it's managed to keep that super special sense of community. If there's anything our country needs right now, it's a sense of community, and that's exactly what we hope to foster and help grow there. For families like mine, Sherwood is exactly what we want, a safe, welcoming place to live. Right now, as Brian mentioned, we are in Seattle, but the overcrowding and safety concerns here have made us rethink our future. We've even held off on starting a family because I don't feel comfortable carrying a baby or raising a baby here in Seattle in this environment. Sherwood has been expanding carefully for over a century, and we see this annexation as a natural next step. It's a chance to welcome new families, new opportunities, while also protecting what makes this town so special. I grew up in a small town in California called Westlake Village, and I've seen firsthand how communities can thrive when they embrace responsible growth. In the late 90s, there was a significant opposition to Westlake Village's expansion. My own parents were included in that. However, Westlake Village moved forward, and today it's flourished as a beautiful, well-planned community. The careful balance of residential, commercial, and green spaces has made it a prime example of sustainable growth that benefits everybody, and I believe Sherwood is on a similar path. I understand that some opposition to this annexation stems from concerns about sustainability and growth management. However, Sherwood's history of careful, measured expansion shows that growth doesn't have to.
I'm now promoting up John Rankin. Please accept the promotion. On deck, we have Terrell Smith, who's also virtual, and then we have Indy Namkun, Mike Connors, Ron Bunch, and Gerard Milner. Please come up and get ready to testify. Thank you very much. You're ready to go, John, when you are promoted. And John, will you please accept your promotion? John is not accepting the promotion at this time, so we're going to move on to Terrell. And John, I'll give you another opportunity after Terrell. Terrell, I am now promoting you as a panelist. Thank you. And your time will start when you start speaking. Thank you very much.
Well, where are you?
You might want to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Council President Peterson and council members, my name is Terrell Smith. I am in support of the Sherwood West expansion. And I don't come as a voice of authority, but as an observer. My observation platform has been a longtime teacher in the Sherwood School District. And as was mentioned, the new, big, large, beautiful high school I had the privilege of teaching in the last few years. And I started teaching in 1978. when the high school enrollment was 350, and as was mentioned, the enrollment now is 1,700. I've been privileged to spend my entire teaching life in the Sherwood School District, observing the Sherwood community and the expansion that it has gone through. And I've had multiple conversations with families who love the Sherwood community, love the town, the city, and everything that it has to offer. Now, while there was occasional capacity challenges within the school district, the community always voted to expand the capacity of the schools in order to accommodate the growth. As you have seen with the new high school, and the Reason Bond, which expanded the other buildings as well, there is plenty of capacity, as was mentioned, the high school in particular, up to 2,400 students, and which would accommodate the future growth of the Sherwood community. The values that I noticed was that providing appreciating the large array of activities, including athletics and arts, adequate and quality homes, access to green spaces, high-performing schools, and unique businesses, as Peter Foster indicated about the sustainable agriculture and farm to table that is also within the proposal. This Sherwood expanded option is a logical extension of what Sherwood has been, and I strongly support it.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, I'm trying again to promote you as a panelist. You can click accept promotion and then you can come on. Thank you very much. John is not accepting, so we'll move on to, well, I'm sure John is accepting, but we're moving on to Indy. You can start when your time begins. Thank you.
Thank you, President Peterson, councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. My name is Indy Namkung. I'm the Transportation Justice Coordinator for Verde. I also participated in the Urban Growth Roundtable through the first half of this year. I am not a land use expert, but I'm here to speak from a transportation perspective and an environmental justice perspective in support of the recommendations you've already heard today and will hear from our partners at Thousand Friends of Oregon. We urge you to focus your efforts and policy on making the most of what we have inside our existing find exciting on their own, but this proposal doesn't come to us in a vacuum. Any plan needs resources and accountability to become a reality. Kali, the community Verde, my organization is rooted in, knows this from experience. When we were annexed into the city of Portland in the 1980s, we were promised sewer and sidewalks to connect us into the rest of the city. We got the sewers, but the money for sidewalks dried up. 40-odd years later, the majority of our neighborhood streets still don't have sidewalks, and our community is intersected by two of our region's major high-injury corridors. This impacts safety, air quality, and mobility for our residents. These conditions persist in our neighborhood, East Multnomah County, and many other lower-income, more racially diverse neighborhoods already inside the UGB, due in large part to chronic and worsening challenges that our state and local governments face, with infrastructure costs outpacing revenue. Building outwards inherently has climate inequity consequences if they're not addressed up front, with induced vehicle miles traveled, greenhouse gas emissions, and barriers to mobility for non-drivers if we're not connecting to public transit and active transportation networks. But this proposal is also not exempt from the chronic infrastructure funding and land readiness challenges our region is already facing. And we urge that your decision and any conditions of approval address this head on. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have Mike Connors. Your time will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, Council President Peterson, members of the council. My name is Mike Connors and I represent David Marks. We submitted a comment letter in July on the draft report, but I'm here today because the CEO recommendations didn't acknowledge or respond to our comments. So we feel that we're raising a very significant issue that we want to make sure the council is aware of. The core issue that we're raising is that we believe that the UGB process that Metro is using violates Goal 14 because it is driven by a single factor, and that is the existence of a concept plan from a local jurisdiction. Our position is supported by a recent Court of Appeals decision, Marks v. LCDC, which Metro is a party to that case, in which the court made that we believe the council needs to focus on. This appeal deals with a LCDC petition for enforcement matter in Stafford, so it's a different one of the central issues in the case was what is the role that a concept plan plays in Metro's UGB expansion decisions. There were 4 key findings that the court found in that case. First, Metro is required to comply with Goal 14 and must consider boundary location factors when determining where to expand the UGB. Second, Goal 14 says nothing about concept plans, and it certainly doesn't support the idea that concept plans alone should be the driver. Third, although your code does recognize concept planning, it is one of several factors that Metro is required to consider. And fourth, Metro cannot avoid the Goal 14 requirement that it study the entire urban reserve area based on a provision in its code. The reason we believe, based on those principles, that Metro's process is violating Goal 14 is because Goal 14 requires you first to establish what is the regional need for housing. And once you establish that, then to look where in the region is that need best served. In this case, Metro has taken the opposite approach. You've started by saying we will only consider areas with a concept plan, and then limited your decision to that concept plan. And we believe are looking at low-end population estimates because you want it to fit that process. We think the process is flawed. And what the council needs to understand is if we were to appeal it, my client is prepared to, we believe that Metro would have to redo this process.
If you can sum up, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that time.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Next up, we have Ron Bunch, and then Gerard Milner, and then we have Kyler Fitch, who will be virtual. The folks who can join up on the front are Chrissy Simonton and Aaron Butler. If you are in the audience, please come up, and if you are on Zoom, please raise your hand. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone, for your patience. Your time starts when you start speaking.
Well, thank you very much, Councilor Peterson and councilors. My name is Ron Bunch, and I've been asked to present a infrastructure cost analysis as it pertains to this proposal. This is another one of the factors that needs to be considered when you begin to expand the urban growth boundary, particularly within the context of the statewide planning goals. And first of all, we have to consider whether this is a really good decision from the perspective of providing adequate public facilities and the ability of the region to support that. And so in starting to do the analysis and doing a deep dive into the concept plan, we've come up with a finding that there's $500 million of infrastructure need out there that's been documented in the concept plan. This includes the foundational infrastructure of about $344 million and development infrastructure that the developers themselves will have to put in to get their developments going and get off the ground. In addition, I found that Highway 99W is going to require some significant infrastructure improvements from getting across Highway 99 from one side to another. Those costs range probably between $9 million and $30 million, depending on what study you look at. You're up to about $500 million in this context. So what is the implications of this? First of all, the cost of providing infrastructure to Sherwood West is going to essentially drive a really small net developable amount of acres up to about $1 million an acre, or $1.2 million an acre. By net developable acres, I mean those acres that are taken out of the total of 605 acres by roads, schools, parks, etc. So you get down to a really small amount of acreage as it pertains to that stuff that is really developable. And then considering the overall fact that you have $1.2 million per acre and low density residential development, precludes transit, precludes cost affordable housing, has already been discussed as well. And then look at the long-term impacts. Someone has to maintain this stuff in perpetuity. There are hundreds of miles of utility lines that will have to be maintained by Sherwood. Those are costs that go on forever, as well as many, many miles of streets, probably up to 75 miles.
Could you please share your last sentence? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next, we have Gerard on who will be going. And then we have Kyler Fitch, which I'll promote you up. Chrissy Simonton, if you are in the Zoom audience or in the physical audience, please come up. Same with Aaron Butler. And then after that, we have Todd Christensen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Milner. I'm a retired professor from Portland State, a housing economist, and founded the Center for Real Estate at Portland State. I dropped a 10-page letter last night, so I don't expect you to have read it, but a couple points I wanted to emphasize. One is that since 1979, the population within our metropolitan area has grown by 80%. Our urban growth boundary, on the other hand, has only grown by 15%. So we're living in an era of an undersupply of land, and that's had enormous impacts. Now, in the 2040 growth process, or the 2040 growth plan, the assumption was made that we could build up rather than build out. And we rejected expanding the boundary. We rejected creating satellite cities. Well, I think what was not explained to the voters at that time is that higher density costs more money. If you look at the 5-story construction that you see typically in East Portland and now in Beaverton, that costs roughly about 50% more. Rents have to be about 50% higher than they would to support 2-story construction. If you go to true high rise, you have to add an additional 50% in rents on a per square foot basis. So we make the assumption that high density is going to be affordable and inexpensive, but in practice it's not. So on that basis alone, I think we desperately need to expand the urban growth boundary. If you were to look at all of the urban reserves that are available, that would represent about a 7% increase in the land supply of the region. You, on the other hand, have only one proposal. And I think you have to reflect, why do we only have one proposal? 6 years ago, we had 4. This year, we only have 1. And I think the reason is because housing markets are regional, and communities that support more housing are really taking one for the team. We need to support them with additional grants for infrastructure to help make their plans possible, putting conditions on their plan, like inclusionary zoning, will only end up causing less housing to be built. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Kyler. You have been promoted. Please, your time will begin when you start speaking. And then Chrissy Simonton, Aaron Butler. Yes. Awesome. Okay, and then next up, that can come up is Peter Foster, Kelly Ross, Brad Smith, and Titonian Wallace. Thank you. All right. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Never mind. All right, Kyler, it's all you.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I live in Sherwood. I have just over 38 acres, just on the edge of the Sherwood West plan. I've raised my 4 children in Sherwood. I love the town, everything it has to offer, from its restaurants, thoughtful and thought-out subdivisions, parks, and schools, including one of Oregon's largest and most beautiful high schools. The Sherwood West plan moving forward is crucial for the city to continue to grow. Furthermore, the Sherwood West plan in its entirety ensures that the wonderful experience I've had and being able to share with my family and friends is available to others. The plan allows the city to move into the next chapter the right way, and the way I'm excited, and I'm very excited to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, next we have Chrissy Simonton. Last call. Great. Aaron Butler. He's the one? Yep, sorry. All right. Next up we have Todd Christensen. I'll be promoting you to a panelist now. Great. And once you're all up on the screen, your time will begin when you start speaking. Thank you very much, Todd. And please make sure to unmute your mic.
Okay. How's that, Georgia?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Council President Peterson and councilors. I appreciate the time. My name is Todd Christensen. My wife, Shannon, and I have been Sherwood residents for 20 years now. In addition, we have a small lavender farm that is inside of the proposed expansion area near the new high school. We are affiliated with the Sherwood Farm Alliance as well, and we are opposed to the expansion and ask the council to not approve the expansion of the UGB. We understand that land use planning obviously is complicated, multidimensional, always contentious, although it has been very, very balanced, as we've talked about earlier today. But you're making decisions that will have generational consequences. And we ask that you evaluate these requests, have three simple things. One, follow the facts and data that are out there. Look at the Metro's own economic forecast, looking at the growth, housing needs. It really doesn't support the need for this expansion at this scale at this time. Two, I would ask that you follow the guidance in the charter and that the council evaluate the request based on the prescription, the legislative prescription, the purpose and protocols for expanding the UGB, and not be part of or influenced by special interest. And three, I would ask that you consider all perspectives and be truly objective. There's many of us that are concerned that the hearings are kind of symbolic or checkmarked as in the box, and many of you may have already decided. There may be some indications of this, by what was said and not said during the growth. Running out of time. I think it's important that your responsibility and duty for all members to engage in all testimony and ask you to listen carefully as you evaluate this decision. And I think if you do, you'll come to a conclusion that the answer is no, it should not be expanded this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm now going to promote Kelly Ritz under the idea that maybe you are also Kelly Ross. We're going to promote you now as a panelist.
Kelly's right here.
Two separate.
Kelly. Oh my gosh.
Two separate Kellys.
Sorry, there's Kelly. Sorry, I'm going to promote you back down. Okay, Kelly, it's all you. Okay. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Kelly Ross, and I represent NAIOP, Oregon, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. I'm going to be as brief as possible because I have submitted written testimony. Just want, in a nutshell, say that we strongly support the COO and impact recommendation to approve the Sherwood expansion, support the recommendation from staff to decrease employment land capacity by excluding lands that have over a 10% slope, and to express concern about the projections for capacity that will be achieved through infill and redevelopment on employment land. We think that those are very aggressive and would suggest to you that you direct staff to develop what this historical data shows on infill and redevelopment to make sure that that is a realistic expectation. But thank you for your time. And I also want to express appreciation to Metro staff, who has been very responsive and patient with questions that I've raised, especially Aaron and Ted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. All right, next we have Titonian Wallace. Did I say that correctly, or is it Tetone? Okay.
Titonian.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Great. So you're on deck, and then, Brad Smith is going first, and then you're going, and then we have Dr. Sienny Corbin, and then who's going to be virtual, and then Alyssa Gochner. Yep. Great. Awesome. And then next we have Preston Korst, if you'd like to come up, if you're still here. Oh, yes, you are. Awesome. And then Sam Diaz. Thank you all. We're really close to the end, so I appreciate you all sticking around. Brad, your time will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Brad Smith. I serve on the executive committee and the board of directors for the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to express the Chamber's strong support of the Sherwood expansion application. The proposed application is vital for our region. As many of you are aware, Washington County is one of the fastest growing in the state. With the growth that comes increased demand in both industrial land and housing. The Sherwood West proposal is uniquely positioned to address both of these. In turn, it supports job creation, economic development, strengthening not just Sherwood, but the entire region. At the same time, the expansion will provide much needed housing opportunities. Our region has been facing significant housing shortages for several years now, and the shortage is driving up housing costs, making it harder for families and individuals to afford houses. One of the aspects of the proposal that we greatly appreciate is the extensive community outreach that the city of Sherwood has undertaken. From the beginning, Sherwood has engaged residents, businesses, and stakeholders in meaningful conversations about how this expansion will shape the future of the area. This type of community involvement ensures that the expansion reflects the diverse needs and aspirations of the entire community, creating a balanced approach to growth. It's a model for how cities should plan for their future. In closing, we strongly support Sherwood's expansion request. This proposal addresses the critical need for more industrial land and housing, ensuring that Washington County remains a vibrant and growing region. We believe this expansion will play a crucial role in shaping the future of Sherwood and the wider community, helping it to thrive as a hub for both industry and residents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Great. Thank you very much, Brad. All right. Next, we have Titonian Wallace. Your time will begin when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, members of the Metro Council. My name is Titonian Wallace Sr., Chair of the Washington County Chamber of Commerce, representing a broad range of businesses and community stakeholders who are deeply invested in the future growth of our region. First, we have concerns about the definition and classification of buildable land. There seems to be an overestimation of the industrial land supply due to the inclusion of smaller parcels that are not attractive to industrial developers. In addition, several large parcels, including defunct rock quarries, are not viable for development. We urge the council to re-examine the criteria used to classify industrial lands and ensure that policy decisions are based on accurate data. Regarding employment lands, we recommend that Metro discount approximately 1,300 acres of land with slope grades above 7%, as this exceeds industry standards for commercial and industrial development. We also encourage the council to consider the inadequate lot sizes for employment lands currently available. In terms of housing, the report underestimates the region's future needs. According to Eco Northwest, the region faces a significant housing shortage that far exceeds the projections in the UGR. The current surplus projected in the report is misleading and could leave our region unprepared for the future. We strongly urge Metro to plan for high growth and incorporate more realistic housing projections to meet the demands of a growing population. We also strongly support the City of Sherwood's expansion application, as the Sherwood West North District mixed employment area is vital to meeting region's industrial land needs and supporting future job creation. And Brad Smith already gave testimony on that issue. In addition, we encourage Metro to take a long-term view regarding state statutes that may constrain your ability to address specific impediments in the land use planning process. Finally, we urge Metro to adopt the high population growth forecast, preparing our region for future demand. Planning for growth ensures that we are not caught underprepared and that our economy remains strong and resilient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Next, we have Sienna Corbin, Dr. Sienna Corbin, and I'm promoting you to a panelist now. After that, we have Preston Korst and Sam Diaz, and then after that, we have Nellie McAdams and Kelly Ritz. Thank you. Your time will begin when you start speaking.
For the record, I'm Dr. Sienna Corbin. My PhD is in Environmental Science Policy and Management, and I'm a faculty member at the Toulon School of Urban Studies and Planning at Portland State University. I'm providing testimony based on my participation in the UGR Stakeholder Roundtable, and I would like to take this time to thank CORE for their testimony. I wanted to share some of my concerns I articulated about the Sherwood proposal, specifically that there are environmental injustices embedded in the plan, and I would like to make them make you aware of them, council members. There are dense neighborhoods which house multifamily homes situated next to industrial zone labeled as employment in the Sherwood West concept plan. The Sherwood West Council Plan reads that these zones are planned in or near commercial areas and employment centers to reduce dependency on vehicles to further reduce the cost of living by reducing dependency on cars and regional commutes. I want to point out similar claims were made during the Homeowner Loan Corporation or HOLC assessments, also known as redlining maps, which placed minority, BIPOC, and low-income residents next to industrial zones, and it was also deemed as a benefit. These multifamily homes have higher potential of being exposed to industrial emissions and pollutants, especially if Sherwood is considering semiconductor industries there. According to the EPA, the semiconductor sites released greenhouse gas emissions and PFAS, which are linked to decreased fertility, development delays in children, increase in some cancers, reduced immune systems, and endocrine disruptions, just to name a few. These homes have less access to natural areas and no neighborhood parks. This is in contrast to the low density single family housing with access to amenities such as backyards, private green spaces, and are nestled next to the very natural area expansions of the boundary, which is they are encroaching upon, and they have more access to public parks. This is a classic environmental injustice, and I would hope that we are not repeating the environmental injustices from the past and bringing them into the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next, we have Preston Korst.
Hello, thank you for having me today. My name is Preston Korst. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at the Home Building Association of Greater Portland. I'd like to note that I am a voting member of MTAC as well as a member of the UGR Stakeholder Roundtable, so I can only assume that the Metro's planning staff is no doubt sick of hearing my voice and seeing my face, but we're going to push through. I am here today to express HBA's strong support for the City of Sherwood's UGB expansion as proposed with little to no conditions, if at all possible. I'm also here to say that to promote housing affordability and for the vitality of our economy, I urge this council to...
Preston, can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we have an issue where our Zoom meeting online ended abruptly, so
Yep.
If you could give us a moment to just figure this out.
You're okay?
For,
On it.
For folks in the
I get about 10 minutes to testify then, is that right?
Sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, sorry. We're on it right now.
No, you're okay.
We can go on? Okay, sorry. We continue?
So I'll just advise council, we are required to make every reasonable effort to have our meetings be able to be virtual so long as Georgia can get people back online. I would advise council continue to take testimony from those in the room, and then we will turn to those online.
Thank you. And Georgia, do we have to rejoin the meeting on our laptops?
Is it possible, Georgia, to?
Can I have 1 minute?
Of course.
You should be able to log back in, counselors. She's got the meeting open. For those who are tuning in from other areas, you should also be able to rejoin the meeting.
Okay. Let's see.
Again, thank you.
Apologies, everyone. Okay. Let's try this.
Preston, you broke the internet.
I broke it again.
Again, huh?
I was also CrowdStrike. If you guys didn't know, that was me.
Yeah, just not.
All right.
7 more minutes.
We're going to get it done. Here we go. All right. Moving the microphone. Okay, it is online. We should be able to continue. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Georgia. And can we reset Preston's time?
Oh, we're okay.
No, we're okay. Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Let me know when you're ready. Want me to get going?
All right,
Yeah, please.
Shall we? Sweet.
Yep.
So I already said we want council to approve unanimously the Sherwood expansion request without conditions. We also believe that a high growth forecast for both industrial lands, employment lands, as well as housing needs is the smart, prudent public policy approach. Just real quickly, specifically, since it was mentioned, I just want to say that the city of Sherwood is going through what I call a very political expansion in their own rights and a political stretch on them. And I want to make sure that council appreciates and tries everything in their power to mitigate that political risk of a UGB expansion, not just for Sherwood, but for other areas we're seeing in other cities across the region, North Plains, King City, and others where there is serious political repercussions for any cities that are attempting to grow rationally and reasonably. So those are sort of the high-level things that I wanted to talk about.
Recording in progress.
Now you got me.
It should have already been. So. Continue.
I think that's it. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have to mute yourself, Georgia. Mute your own.
All right.
Thank you, Preston.
If the folks in the back could in the open just remove them, that was nice. Okay. Sam Diaz.
I don't think I can do it within it.
Georgia, you have to your computer.
But then the Zoom can't hear.
Is your computer muted?
I'm not on Zoom.
Okay.
Although, did the echo stop?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Georgia, are we still good?
I think the audio feeds from a different source than your computer.
I know, but I switched it so it's just mine so that we could get the cameras back. But
Okay.
All right. Well, let's see how that goes.
It seems to be working now.
Yeah, now it's not echoing.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Apologies, everyone.
Great. You are welcome to go.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Council. For the record, my name is Sam Diaz, Executive Director at 1000 Friends of Oregon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and participate in the urban growth stakeholder round. I know.
We need to have this on. Which this echo, but they can hear it on Zoom. Is that okay?
I think we should move to virtual meeting due to technical issues. Deputy President, and we can continue in person.
Can we wrap up the in person? All right. Votes. Okay, Karen.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit hard, but yeah, we could take a recess and convene in 2 minutes, just maybe leave the camera online and counselors go into their offices. I don't know if you have the time or if you are wanting to go ahead and just hold the hearing over.
Yeah, we only have until 1:30, so.
It's up to council as you wish to proceed.
We have two people sitting in front of us that I think we should hear
We'll
from.
take the online testimony.
Mr. Chair, didn't the president say this hearing would be recessed and opened again later and we'll take more testimony at another date?
So councilors,
I think we do have opportunity for input.
Yeah,
I think for today, let's just end the Zoom and collect this testimony.
I'm sorry, two of you are talking to me at once, and so I didn't quite actually capture the question. Perhaps it's a statement.
We'll end the Zoom and take the in-person testimony, and then anyone else that's online, they'll have future opportunities for testimony.
Yeah, I think that's acceptable. We're clearly having technological challenges that we have tried to fix, and so this meeting will be available to recorded for those who want to watch it afterwards. So I think it's acceptable for council to stay at the dais, to have the two people who are up here to testify today, and then we will carry over the hearing to another date.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Do you need, please continue. Is there still an echo or are we good?
You're good. Ready?
Okay, great. First, the question we all must address, do we need to expand our UGB for population or job growth? Based on data from Metro staff and recent inventory updates, the answer is no. We have over 500,000 parcels of land inside the existing UGB, multiple industrial sites of all sizes, including at least 2 500-acre sites, and we're suffering from a 24% region-wide vacancy rate in our commercial buildings. That's not including shadow space. A bleaker forecast comes from Colliers International, noting that this is the 17th consecutive quarter of increasing vacancy rate in commercial buildings in the greater metro area. And the governor's recent announcement for possibly adding 373 acres of industrial land to our existing UGB through Senate Bill 4 adds more reason to reject this expansion. Given the surplus of available land inside our UGB, we urge Metro Council to help this region avoid a pitfall by 1, narrowing down the proposal to only include land zoned residential immediately adjacent to the existing UGB, and 2, adopting enforceable affordability conditions. We have communicated a possible approach to making real progress on housing affordability in the city of Sherwood, recruiting subject matter specialists who plan, build, and manage affordable housing in our region. 1,000 Friends of Oregon urges the city of Sherwood to set aside land and funding for a farm worker housing and health center, which brings me to one important reflection I need to say on record. In community conversations and public hearings, I hear a phrase often said regarding affordable housing: the state made us do it. Or in conversations in these chambers, Metro is going to make us do it. I'm asking all of us to stop using this talking point. What this implies, what the average audience takes away, is that affordable housing is some form of punishment. Where should our farm workers who grow your food, our food, and make the wine you drink live? Where should the people who teach your children live? Where should the people who take care of our elders in assisted homes live? The current demographics, this expansion proposal, and constant lobbying against conditions placed by Metro before you says not in Sherwood. This current proposal says the quiet part out loud. Every city should be building towards a future and shifting our culture to create neighborhoods we all can call home. We must think not just about walking our children to school safely, but running into their teacher on the way because they can afford to live in the same neighborhood. If the City of Sherwood or Metro Council do not agree to these conditions, we urge Metro Council to reject this expansion proposal altogether for the good of the region.
Thank you, Sam. Next we have Nellie McAdams, and Zoom is working again, just so everyone's aware. So yes, your time will start when you begin speaking.
Esteemed councilors, my name is Nellie McAdams and I represent Friends of Smart Growth. I respectfully urge you to vote no on this unnecessary, costly, inequitable, and environmentally damaging proposed expansion. Metro's UGBs contain more than enough land for housing, industry, and commercial needs. This includes a surplus of 30,000 buildable housing units in the next 20 years. Building on greenfields is not only unnecessary, it drains limited infrastructure dollars from existing urban areas. And low-density single-family homes like those proposed do not generate enough tax revenue to pay for their own infrastructure costs. Low-density homes are also inequitable. They cannot support mass transit, which requires 17 units per acre to be self-sustaining, and they are unaffordable. A trickle-down approach to building expensive homes and assuming prices will come down never works. Metro has a 20-year supply of up to 7,500 acres of industrial land. New land is not needed, and economic development does not require the types of industries that Sherwood has proposed, which are extremely land extensive and expensive to service. Lastly, more commercial land would only drain resources from Portland's commercial real estate that is vacant. Not only is this expansion costly and unnecessary, but it destroys irreplaceable farmland in natural areas. Land adjacent to cities is often our best farmland, and we've already lost a lot of it. We are currently sitting on the largest patch of Class 1 soil in the state. We have a duty to steward what remains of for our food system, environment, and climate. It would be the height of irony to pave over everything in Sherwood's UGB up until wine country, and then call the new commercial area the new gateway to wine country. The role of Metro is to provide regional planning for urban and rural areas, not to oversee the incremental development of the remaining rural land in Metro's jurisdiction. An approval of Sherwood's proposal would be a failure to efficiently and equitably plan for the land within all of Metro's UGBs. No matter how much money has been put into a plan, if the result is a bad investment that saddles the region with unnecessary long-term infrastructure costs while draining needed resources from inside existing UGBs, you have a duty to reject that plan and to fix the process. I urge Metro to steward the land we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, and that is all of our in-person testimony, I believe. Yes?
Yes.
think we have one.
No.
We have one more.
One more? Okay. We'll take
Is
one
that
more.
is that okay? Counselor?
We'll take one more.
Okay.
We have, you're going to the 3:30.
And for the online folks, we are going to move the rest of the public hearing
It can wait.
to Thursday of next week, which is October 3rd. I am so sorry that you were unable to testify today.
I'll be quick. Thank you.
What is your name?
Nick.
Okay.
My name is Nick Triska. I use he, him pronouns. Members of council, thank you for the opportunity to comment here very quickly. I'm here this afternoon representing Greater Portland, Inc., the regional public-private partnership dedicated to creating and expanding jobs and advancing equitable economic prosperity across the metropolitan area. As head of business development, it is my job to understand and support traded sector activity that drives our regional economy. On behalf of Greater Portland, Inc., I would like to express continued support for the City of Sherwood's proposal to bring Sherwood West into the urban growth boundary and the urgency with which we must address industrial land and site readiness. In addition to points made in previous written testimony, I wish to further justify the position with one new comment, and that is semiconductor industry expansion presents Oregon with an extraordinary opportunity to create a stronger, more resilient economy, an opportunity predicated on the availability of adequate employment lands. We have the opportunity to solidify Oregon's position as a world leader in semiconductor innovation by expanding physical capacity for new semiconductor design and manufacturing investment. Sherwood West has the ability to supply the region with a critical supply of mid-sized industrial sites, filling gaps in the region's spectrum of industrial sizes and locations to serve semiconductor and advanced manufacturing industry clusters. Greater Portland, Inc. is resolute in its endorsement of this proposed expansion of the urban growth boundary. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I want to thank everyone for being with us for this marathon session of public comment. Much appreciated. I know we're about to lose quorum, so I think we'll defer.
Absolutely.
CEO Communications and Counter Communications.
Deputy Council President Duncan Cron, just to be very clear for the record, you are carrying over the public hearing to October 3rd. I know Georgia previously said that, but I want to make clear for the record.
That's right.
That it's being carried over for those folks who had signed up to testify today, but were not able to due to time constraints.
Great. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 3rd at 10:30, where we'll continue the conversation.